Hello, and welcome back to Zenin Fanfics. Today we're starting an exciting new series. What if Deku had time manipulation quirk? If you enjoy this video, please like and subscribe for more content. The story we're featuring is written by HeWhoSawTheFall on Wattpad. You can find all the relevant links in the description, so be sure to check out the author's profile and say hello. Now, let's dive into the story. In a world full of superpowers, there were those who used their gifts to save and those who used their gifts to destroy. Izuku Midoriya, since a very young age, wanted to be a hero. His inspiration was All Might, the number one hero of the time, and the symbol of peace. Everybody got their quirks at the age of 4 or 5. There were some who got it a little late at the age of 6. And there were those who didn't have a quirk at all, though they were in the minority. Izuku had a friend, his name was Katsuki Bakugo. They both went to the quirk doctor at the same time at the age of 4 to learn what their quirks were. Bakugo's quirk was Explosion. It allowed him to sweat nitroglycerin, which he could ignite to create explosions. It was quite a powerful quirk. Izuku, however, was a cut above Bakugo. His quirk was the ability to stop and manipulate time. Such a quirk had never been seen before, so it had no name. Izuku named the quirk Stopwatch, a fitting name. However, as it had no president, no one knew how to activate the quirk. Izuku would have to figure that out on his own. One day, while Izuku and Bakugo were playing, Izuku tripped. Just as he was about to fall, his quirk activated subconsciously. Time got frozen. Izuku's eyes remained closed for a bit more time when he finally realized he hadn't fallen or felt any pain. So he opened his eyes and saw that all the color was gone from the world. Everything was frozen. Izuku got a bit scared, unable to return everything to normal. He tried a lot of things, and he closed his eyes and screamed, "Unpause," and everything started moving again. Izuku stood there stupefied for a few seconds. But suddenly his surprise turned to delight. He had activated his quirk. So he started to think back to what happened before, and he realized that he had unconsciously said, "Stop." The moment he said stop again, time froze. A big smile appeared on Izuku's face. He said, "Resume," and time went back to normal. He had put the most basic functions of his quirk, stopping and resuming time. However, there were many more things he had yet to discover. He shared the news with Bakugo, and both of them were elated. A bit later, they ran to their homes and told their families about it. And so had begun the journey of Izuku Midoriya, the timeless hero and the eternal symbol of peace. Izuku, after figuring out how to control his quirk, decided to train once he reached 10 years of age. Time passed by quickly. The day after he turned 10 years old, he started to think about how to train his quirk. He figured out that though he can use his quirk whenever he wished, the amount of time it remained in effect, however, was something that he could improve. As it stood, he could pause time for just 3 seconds before time resumed by itself. The amount of time his quirk remained in effect was directly proportional to his stamina. His quirk had a few levels. The more he practiced it, the closer he got to leveling up his quirk. Realizing what he had to do, he started to practice relentlessly. 2 years went by in the blink of an eye. His quirk was on the threshold of level 3. He could break through at any moment. Suddenly, Izuku's eyes gained a strange glow. He had broken through. He experimented a bit and realized that he could do more now. Before, he could only stop or resume time. But now he was capable of slowing or speeding up time. He could slow time quite a bit, but not a whole lot. He could speed up time by about 500%. He saw that although he could do it, it made him dead tired after using it for just 5 seconds. But he could make something age 25 years in those 5 seconds. But this was just the beginning. He kept training relentlessly for 3 more years till the age of 15. By then, he had already reached level 5 and was now working on increasing his control further. He had also learned different fighting styles, such as boxing and kung fu. You see, though he had indeed a powerful quirk, it had practically no offensive power. As such, the only way for him to win a fight against someone was to learn how to fight. As it stood, Izuku could stop time for up to 100 seconds. He had also discovered all the basic functions of his quirk. Now it was up to him to create new moves that would help him even more. Izuku went over to Bakugo's house. When he knocked on the door, his sister Katsumi opened the door. Katatuku and Katsuki were twins both in looks, quirks, and personality. Izuku asked, "Katsumi-san, do you know where Kaken is?" She replied, "Yeah, he's in his room upstairs." "Thanks, Katsu-san." Izuku ran up the stairs to Bakugo's room. They talked for a little while, then both went back to their homes to rest. After all, the next day was a very important one for them, seeing as tomorrow is the entrance exam. The UA entrance exam. UA is said to be the greatest school to study to become a hero. It is the most prestigious school in the country, and its entrance exam is also equally hard. Katsuki, his sister Katsumi, and Izuku are all planning on going to UA. The time had come. The entrance exam had appeared. They only had one chance. If they failed, then they would be unable to take the exam again till next year. They reached the gate of UA. While trying to enter, Izuku tripped on God knows what and was about to fall when he caught himself using his quirk. They found their way to the auditorium. Present Mike, a pro hero, was going to give a speech before the exam. Once all the examinees arrived, he began, "Can I get a hey?" Everyone remained silent. You could hear a pin drop. Mike's sweat dropped and continued, "Okay then. Welcome to the UA entrance exam. There will be many obstacles." He continued to give his speech, however, most of the people present stopped to pay attention to what he was saying. After a little while, though, everyone started to pay attention again, as Mike got into the important stuff. There will be faux villains which you have to defeat. There will be 3 kinds. The weakest will be worth 1 point, the medium ones 2 points, and the strongest ones 3 points dash. Suddenly a kid with blue hair and shining specs suddenly stood up. One could easily tell that this guy was a stickler for rules. He interrupted Mike and began, "Sir, in a guidebook, it say there are 4 kinds of robots. If this is a mistake, then it is immensely shameful for the institution. And you," he points to Izuku, the one with the green hair, "you've been mumbling continuously. It is very distracting. Please stop." Izuku, who hadn't noticed the blue-haired kid, stopped mumbling and looked at him. Then he stood up and said, "I'm sorry. But first of all, you're the only one who is being disturbed by my muttering. And secondly, if you waited for like 5 more seconds, Sensei, Mike would have explained it." Izuku then sat down on his seat, and the blue-haired kid, who was now red with embarrassment, sat down as well. Present Mike then said, "Thank you. Anyways, as I was saying, the 4th one is nothing but an obstacle. It is worth no points. It is best if you avoid it. On everybody slip the zone they have to go to is marked. Once everybody reaches, I will announce the beginning of the exam." After he finished, everybody went to their respective zones. Izuku was in Zone D, Katsuki in Zone A, and Katsumi was with her brother. The entrance exam was about to begin. Izuku's quirk is very useful and has a lot of potential, however, it has one problem. Attack power. It doesn't possess a lot of power to defeat an opponent. This, however, could be remedied very easily. He learned multiple different hand-to-hand combat styles. But he realized that wasn't enough. So he also learned to use a sword. One day, while practicing, he accidentally discovered something. He had subconsciously imbued his sword with his time power. This caused the tree he was practicing on to suddenly turn to dust. However, this was happening subconsciously. As a result, when he did that attack, he lost the trance-like status was in, and the blade lost the effect. However, he realized this was a very powerful and dangerous ability. It could he potentially save his life if he were in danger. He trained and experimented for the next week and finally managed to get in under control. He named it the Timeless Sword. It was a strike which could transcend time. Back to the present. Present Mike had started the countdown. 3, 2, 1 inch. The doors had begun to open when he started to count down and finished when he said 1. Izuku, without even bothering about the other participants, immediately rushed in. The blue-haired kid immediately screamed, "Hey, the countdown hasn't finished yet." Mike retorted, "Do you think that there will be countdowns in real life? That kid's got the right idea. What are you waiting for? Go, go, go." Immediately, everybody started running. However, Izuku had already reached the first of the faux villains. His sword struck out 5 times, and 5 two-pointers turned to dust. Then he activated his quirk. 50%, time immediately slowed down to half of its normal speed. Immediately, Izuku started to go after the faux villains closest to him. His could currently maintain a 50% reduction for 20 seconds. Then there was a 5-second cool down PRD. However, 20 seconds were more than enough. 20 seconds passed in the blink of an eye. To everybody, it seemed like everything suddenly slowed down a half of the normal speed while his speed didn't change whatsoever. They looked on in shock as he destroyed 12 one-pointers, 7 two-pointers, and 5 three-pointers. So in total, he now had 51 points. In order to get into the hero course, one needed just 40 points. So he had quite surely secured his position. So he got atop a building and waited for the time to run out. He was unaware, however, that a group of heroes were currently in the observation deck watching their performance and commenting. Everybody had been startled by Izuku. This seeming unimpressive kid was capable of defeating even some pros. That was saying something. The Chimera, who also happened to be the principal Nizu, suddenly smiled. All the heroes, upon seeing that smile, shivered slightly. They knew that smile all too well. Nizu looked at a red button near him. He said, "Well, I believe it's time to let it out." All Might, the symbol of peace and the #1 hero, said concerned, "Are you sure, sir?" Nizu didn't say anything and pressed the button. Suddenly, all the participants were alerted. It seemed as though there was an earthquake. Suddenly, a faux villain the size of a 10-story building appeared. Everybody's reaction was the same: run. Izuku, however, was different. He saw that, due to the stampede, many people had fallen over. Suddenly, he noticed a purple-haired girl with what seemed like earphone jacks coming out of her ears. There was a large slab of concrete on her leg. She was asking for help, however no one was bothering. This made Izuku furious. He immediately activated his quirk, and time slowed down to a crawl. Izuku started to calmly walk down towards the 0-pointer. However, while his demeanor was calm, his aura was furious. His voice coldly rang out in everybody's ears: "Cowards." With 3 strikes in key place on the 0-pointer, he was sure he had destroyed it. He then destroyed the boulder on the purple-haired girl's leg. Then he stopped his quirk, and everything went back to normal. He asked her, "What your name?" "Kyoka. Kyoka Jiro." "Are you okay? Can you walk?" "I've sprained my ankle. Other than that, everything seems to be good." "All right, that's good." With that, Izuku got up, and the bell rang, signifying the end of the exam. Izuku was completely unaware of the heroes, who had appreciative smiles on their faces. One of the heroes, who looked like he hadn't slept in years, suddenly spoke out, "I want him in my class." President Mike, who was shocked by the declaration, said, "Aizawa, are you sure?" "Yes." This homeless-looking person was indeed Shoyuta Aizawa, the pro-hero Eraserhead. Izuku met up with Bakugo and Katsumi after the exam, and they went back together. When they reached home, they all took some rest. Only Izuku did not sleep. While he was fighting the 0-pointer, he had sensed something change about his quirk. He got into a meditative pose and started to sense his quirk. He realized that his quirk had evolved to its true form. He realized that he could now stop or slow time in a particular area. The smaller the area, the longer he can freeze or slow time for. He decided to rest for the day and practice the day after. He ate dinner and went to sleep. The next day, he woke up early, ate breakfast, and went out to practice. G started to see what he could do this new ability. He tried to sense his new abilities once again. He spent almost 30 minutes to get a sense of his new capabilities. He opened his eyes and raised his hands toward the part of the Mustafar beach. Suddenly, a small, or the size of a tennis ball, began to appear in his palm. It took him a full 5 minutes to condense the orb or sphere, and it shot forth toward the part of the beach. Upon contact, it expanded to a sphere with a radius of 1 meter. Izuku smiled resplendently. He started to try again. He continued to practice over and over so that he could execute this faster. He spent the entire afternoon improving it, until finally he was capable of condensing one of those orbs in just 10 seconds. He went back home and rested. Suddenly, his mother entered the room with an envelope in her hand. She said, "Izuku, it's here." Izuku took it and replied, "Thanks, Mom," then went upstairs to his room. There he tore open the letter, revealing a projector. The projector turned on, revealing a homeless-looking person. "My name is Shota Aizawa. He'll be your class teacher. You secured a total of 106 points. including the hero and villain points. I'm too lazy to explain the point system. Welcome to your Hero Academia. Izuku smiled and said, My Hero Academia, heh. The next day, Izuku woke up earlier than normal. He did his regular exercise, then went down for breakfast. After breakfast, he freshened up and wore the uniform, which had arrived yesterday as well, then prepared to set out to UA. After convincing his mother that everything was fine and that he had taken everything he set out from his house. A little later, he finally arrived at UA. He entered the building and started searching for Class 1A. Finally, when he found his way to his class through the corridors, which were labyrinths in their own right. After taking a deep breath, he opened the door. Midoriya entered the room and saw something that was well beyond his imagination. A Pomeranian arguing with a Sonic ripoff, in other words, Katsuki Bakugo arguing with Tenya Ida. While ignoring the two, he decided to take an empty seat well away from the two. He noticed a yellow caterpillar laying on the ground, deciding that it wasn't worth mulling over. He just sat down. Suddenly he heard, Hey, you're the guy who saved me, aren't you? Said that purple-haired girl. Well, that's what it seems like. He stood up and extended his hand towards her. The name's Midoriya. Izuku Midoriya. Nice to meet ya. Likewise. The name's Jiro. Kyokujiro. I am extremely sorry if I messed up the spelling TW2L. It's about time for him to step in. Midoriya suddenly grinned as everyone saw a yellow caterpillar-looking thing stand up. The caterpillar-looking thing was actually a sleeping bag. Suddenly the man inside popped out of the bag and said, It all took you 7 seconds to quiet down. We need to fix that. My name is Shota Aizawa. I'm your homeroom teacher. Suddenly he pulled out a PT dress from God knows where and said, Put on your PT uniforms. We're going to have a test of sorts. Meet me in the field in 5 minutes. With this he walked out. The class remained stunned with the exception of Midoriya, who was still grinning and seemed to be quite amused as he left the room calmly. The class remained still for a few more seconds when suddenly all hell broke loose. Everybody started to scamper to the changing rooms. By the time the others reached the changing rooms, Midoriya had already finished changing. He calmly walked to the field where he saw Aizawa was already waiting. Aizawa noticed him, looked at his watch, and noted, Good. You're pretty efficient about time. Well, sensei, it's a must if I want to control my quirk. That's so. I'm beginning to like you, kid. At this time, the others reached the field and saw the unlikely duo waiting for them. Katsuki immediately noticed Midoriya. Oi, when'd you get here? I've been here for quite some time, Kakin. TCH, whatever you cheat. Well, I don't mind the banter. We need to get this done with. We will do a series of tests to determine how good you are with your quirk. Aizawa interjected. There will be 6 tests. A speed test, a strength test, a ball throw test, an endurance test, a side jump test, a high jump test. These tests are meant to make you use the most of your abilities. The test began. As expected, Midoriya dominated the speed and endurance tests. He came 3rd in the side jumps test, 4th in high jump test. He shattered the strength measure machine. Finally, the time came for the ball throw. Katsuki had been asked to demonstrate, and he got a mind-boggling 478 meters. A bubbly girl, Ochako Uraraka, got infinity cause she erased the ball's gravity. But the time came for Midoriya to throw the ball. Midoriya, it's your turn, said Aizawa. Okay, let's get this over with. Midoriya stood at the spot with ball in hand. He took a deep breath and threw the ball. The moment the ball left his hand, it seemed to disappear, and all sound stopped. This continued for a solid 5 seconds when suddenly a thundering roar was heard, which was the sound of the ball breaking the sound barrier several times in quick succession. Everybody was flabbergasted. Aizawa grinned like a maniac as he showed the meter in his hand. It showed error. The ball couldn't handle the power and got obliterated. The last measured distance was 793 kilometers. Clarified Aizawa. Then he showed them a performance list. At the very top was Midoriya, and at the bottom was Minoru Mineta. Mineta, pack your bags. You're out, said Aizawa as he left. Today was certainly eventful, said Midoriya. Unaware to him, a certain mighty pro hero was watching him closely. The day passed by rather uneventfully. Then came the time for the class everyone was waiting for. Hero Studies with All Might. Before he arrived, all the students were very excited about the class. They were all chatting among themselves about various topics, but the most common being the man of the hour himself, All Might, the current symbol of peace. All of a sudden, a loud noise was heard. The door flung open as one of the most iconic phrases of all time boomed out in a voice familiar to all. "I am here like a normal person." In that moment, he entered the room. The symbol of peace himself, All Might. Almost everyone had the same thought. So cool. Almost everyone, as a certain broccoli boy thought, that is anything but normal. Suddenly from God knows where he pulled out a card. On the card it was written, Battle Training. Suddenly Bakugo gained a maniacal smirk, while Midoriya just raised an eyebrow. But All Might started, "Every hero needs a good costume." He pulled out a remote from again, God knows where, and pressed a button. Suddenly a lot of shelves popped out with their names on it. All the students became excited and ran over to the shelves. They all took out their costumes and went over to the changing rooms. "Meet me in Ground D," said All Might as he went off. Izuku calmly went over to the shelf as he took out his costume. He smiled slightly as he went over to the changing rooms. He entered the room and saw something that was interesting to say the least. Katsuki was screaming at a red-haired shark-like guy, half naked. The others were ignoring them as they put on their costumes. Deciding that was for the best, he also put on his own costume. Then he used his quirk to go to the training ground. He used a special ability he developed. He called it Warp. It bent space and time around him and created a tunnel for him to walk through. So he doesn't actually teleport. He just folds space on itself to make the distance shorter. He reached the area and saw All Might waiting for them. All Might seemed shocked by Izuku's sudden appearance, but he recovered quickly. Very soon after that, the other students started to file in. Once all the students were there, All Might said, "You guys already look like heroes. But now the real training starts." He pulls out a script as all the students' sweat dropped. He began, "Listen up. The villains have stolen a nuclear bomb and are hiding it in a building. The heroes have to go into the building to recover the device and capture the villains. There will be 8 teams of 2 people. These teams will be decided on the basis of lottery." The Sonic rip-off, as Izuku called him, raised his hand and said, "Is this because we may have to partner up with people we don't know?" Truly, UA is the greatest hero school. All Might's sweat dropped. Why, yes, indeed. What am I talking about? All the people went over to draw their own ball. At the end, the team distribution was like this. Team A, Ochako Uraraka and Mashreo Ojiro Team B. Momo Yairozu and Hanta Siro Team C. Tenya Ida and Katsuki Bakugo Team D. Izuku Midoriya and Kyoka Jiro. M2 Posi 2 type in all the teams and their names. Jiro went up to Izuku. "Seems like we're a team." Izuku looked over to her. "Indeed. So what's your quirk?" "My quirk is earphone jack. It allows me to hear very far and also creates sound of any frequency. That's a really useful quirk. My quirk is stopwatch, which allows me to stop or manipulate time in any way I see fit." Jiro stared at Izuku wide-eyed, unable to believe what she just heard. "Okay, you are just too OP. Huh, yes I am," All Might declared. "Okay, first will be Team A and Team G. Team A will be the heroes, and Team G the villains." Just like that, battle training began. One after another, the battles ended, some faster than others. Finally came Izuku and Jiro's turn. They say bombs forged in battle last a lifetime. Whether they do or not remains to be seen, but one thing is certain. There will definitely be a bond formed between these two. All Might called out, "Team C versus Team D. Team C will be the villains and Team D will be the heroes. Team C may enter into the building to hide the bomb and D make a plan." Ida and Bakugo went into the building. They hid the bomb and started to make a plan. Bakugo said, "That OP broccoli is going to try and finish it quickly, so be careful. He can stop or even skip time, and if you're not careful, then you will be done in." Ida noticed how serious Bakugo was and just nodded. "Okay, heroes may enter." Izuku looked at Jiro and nodded. Izuku walked into the building with Jiro. Jiro knelt down and planted her earphones into the ground. Very soon, she heard the two. They split up. One is by the bomb, it seems, and the other is rushing towards us. The one rushing us is most probably Bakugo. He is rash and doesn't think things through. I'll deal with him. Wait here." Izuku got up and started to walk forward. He stopped in place and closed his eyes. He opened up his eyes again, but now they were no longer the usual green. His eyes were blue with black clock arms inside them. This was the indication that he had activated his quirk. All of a sudden, Bakugo appeared and punched forward at him. Suddenly, the clock, which was ticking in his eyes, halted, and the world started to slow down till everything was frozen. He sighed and moved out of the way of his punch. He slammed his fist into Bakugo's gut and followed it up with a roundhouse kick to the face. Then he unfroze time, and suddenly Bakugo went flying off to the wall and crashed through it. He fell down unconscious. "Too predictable," was all Izuku said as he walked forward. All the people observing the battle seemed dumbfounded as Izuku appeared to have disappeared and reappeared in a different place, and Bakugo suddenly flew away even though Izuku did nothing. Izuku and Jiro continued up to the third floor where Ida was guarding the bomb. Izuku signaled to Jiro to send out a high-frequency sound blast at Ida. Jiro did as he asked and sent out a powerful sound blast at Ida. Ida barely reacted in time to dodge it, but that was all it took for Izuku to finish it. He froze time and walked up to Ida. With a swift neck chop, he knocked him out. Then he unfroze time and went over to the bomb and touched it. A loud bell rang, signaling the end of the round and their victory. They walked back to the observation room as the medical personnel entered and took Ida and Bakugo to Recovery Girl. The rest of the day was quite uneventful. The students went off back to their homes. Izuku and Bakugo were waiting by the front gate for their friends. Soon their friends arrived. "Yo," said Izuku. "Hey," replied Jiro and Uraraka, almost in unison. After making some small talk, the four started walking together to their respective houses. Soon only Izuku and Bakugo were left. The others had gone into their homes. The two childhood friends started to walk. Soon they parted ways and went on their ways. On reaching his house, Izuku went to the kitchen where his mother was. Midoriya was a sweet lady and a caring mother. The moment she saw Izuku, she got a huge smile on her face. She didn't even ask what he wanted to eat. She didn't need to. She was his mother. She knew what he wanted. After they ate, Izuku went up to his room and started to meditate. He felt something inside himself growing, bubbling, waiting to explode. He started exploring what it was, and slowly but surely he started figuring it out. His power was evolving. It was about to reach the final stage. He created a barrier around himself by bending the space. He couldn't control space or manipulate it on a large scale, but he could do it in a small area around himself. With a sudden push, he poured out all the excess power rushing through his body into his quirk. If not for the barrier, he probably would have leveled everything in a 500-meter radius of himself. The evolution of a quirk is a mysterious thing. Most people don't understand why or how it happens. But one thing is for certain: when it happens, it makes the user much more powerful. The sudden evolution of his quirk caused Izuku to pass out. When Izuku regained consciousness, it was morning. He got up and disabled the barrier and started to feel for the changes in his quirk. He figured while there were no changes in his quirk, something about him had indeed changed. It was as though whatever had been holding him back had disappeared. He smiled and got ready for the next day of school. The week went by more or less without any problems. Occasionally there were some surprises, but nothing worth mentioning. At this point, they had all gotten used to Aizawa and his sudden exams. The moment Aizawa entered the classroom, everyone went quiet. Dead quiet. Aizawa seemed as though he was pleased by their rationality, but soon suppressed it. "All right," he began today, right when he said that all the students sat straight in their seats. Not another surprise test. Aizawa continued, unaware of the students' thoughts. "You're going to choose a class representative." All the students relaxed and got exited, finally a normal school event. Everyone started chatting among themselves. All the students started to scream for the others to choose them, as though it was the election for the presidency of the country and not the class. Suddenly Ida raised his hand. "I say we should vote on who should be the president." Everyone's sweat dropped at him as they noticed his hand was raised the highest. After the voting was done, the results were calculated. It turned out the class president was Izuku, and a girl named Momo was the vice president. After the voting, the bells rang, signaling the end of class, as everyone went excitedly to the cafeteria where Lunch Rush was serving food. Everyone had already formed their own groups, and they sat accordingly. Everyone was busy eating and chatting when suddenly a loud siren rang. Warning! Level 3 warning. Level 3 warning. As the siren continued, the students started to panic and started rushing out towards the doors. Izuku, realizing the gravity of the situation and the consequences a stampede could have, immediately made a plan. He told Uraraka to use her quirk on Ida, who would go over to the corridor and calm down the students. His plan went like clockwork, pun intended. While this was going on, Izuku went over to the entrance gate. He noticed that it had been disintegrated, clearly the work of a quirk. At the same time, the teachers arrived. When they reached, they saw Izuku kneeling on the ground and touching the ashes. He got up from his position and went over to the teachers. He said, "There's been a breach. Whoever this was, they did this with clear intentions. They wanted us to know that they can enter the school whenever they wish, and we cannot do anything to stop them. This is very concerning." Once he finished, he went up to his class in deep thought, leaving behind a group of dumbstruck teachers. At an undisclosed location, Shigaraki, a man wearing a tuxedo who looked like he was made of clouds, said to a man wearing a hoodie with multiple hands all over his body, "We are prepared. Everything should go as planned." The man no, as Shigaraki started laughing menacingly as he said, "Tomorrow the world loses its symbol of peace. Hee ha 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 ha." The next few days passed relatively quietly. Nothing out of the ordinary, other than Aizawa's sudden tests. Everyone had gotten used to the routine. However, everyone's favorite class was still Hero Studies. In this way, another week passed. Aizawa is typically not the person to come late. However, today, it has already been 5 minutes since the bell rang. Everyone was chatting amongst themselves, confusedly trying to figure out the reason for this delay. Suddenly, the door opened, and in walked Aizawa. He said, "Kids, put on your hero suits or PT uniforms. We're going to the USJ." All the kids started, whooping and howling happily. Within 5 minutes, all the students were ready. Ida was trying to get everyone in line as everyone watched him amused. Suddenly, Izuku said, "Ida, don't bother. It's not going to be that kind of bus." Ida turned around and was about to reply when he noticed that the bus was arriving, and to his dismay, it indeed was not that kind of a bus. On the way, the students kept chatting with each other. Suddenly, Tsu Azui, a girl with a frog quirk, asked Izuku, "Hey, can I ask what your quirk is? I couldn't tell what it was. Also call me Tsu." He replied, "Well, to answer your question, my quirk is stopwatch. It allows me to control time. With it, I can stop, slow, or accelerate time." All the students who were listening looked at him in shock, which was to be expected. Soon after, the students reached the USJ. The students got off the bus and walked up to the building. It was a huge complex which contained all sorts of emergency scenarios that could occur. The students were still getting over the feeling of being overwhelmed when suddenly a person appeared. This person was the pro hero, 13. He had a powerful quirk which allowed him to create a black hole with immense destructive power. He gave everyone a small speech on the dangers of using a quirk the wrong way. A single loss of control could cause the death of an innocent bystander. Suddenly, Kirishima, a boy with sharp teeth and red hair, said, "Hey, look, they even have fake villains." Aizawa, who had reached the students by then, got into a fighting stance and said, "Those aren't fake. Those are real villains." A man with pale blue hair suddenly walked up and said, "I don't see All Might. Oh, I'm sure if we kill a few students, he will appear." Ha ha ha. Hearing this, the students enter panic. The teachers went into battle and started fighting. Suddenly, a portal opened, and out came a foggy man wearing a tuxedo. But Kago, being as hot-headed as ever, charged at the villain who introduced himself as Kirojiri. Suddenly, Kirojiri activated his quirk, which resulted in a portal opening and sucking the students in. The students got ported all around the USJ, where numerous villains had appeared. Izuku, who was with the students before the portal appeared, used his quirk to shift his position in space and got out of the portal's reach. He saw that all his friends and classmates were scattered around the place. The fear caused a panic among the students. Izuku took a moment to figure out the situation and make a plan. Once he had a plan ready, he took a deep breath and went into the fight. He noticed 3 villains together about to ambush 2 of his classmates. He slowed time down to a crawl and went into action. He kicked one of the villains in the neck, slammed his fist into another's face, and roundhouse kicked the last one, and then restored the flow of time. All 3 were flung away. He moved off to deal with the other villains. He was like a force of nature, unstoppable. He took out quite a few of the villains and also assisted some of his classmates. When he was sure that all the villains had been more or less taken care of, he went to the center of the building. He noticed Aizawa fighting the one who appeared to be the leader of the pack. He went to help Aizawa when suddenly a hulking beast appeared. It slammed its fist into Aizawa and flung him away. Izuku appeared and caught him to prevent any very large injuries. "Sensei, you okay?" Aizawa looked at him. "It'll take more than that to take down Problem Child." Izuku looked up at the thing. At that time, the hands of the lame spoke. "Did you like that? This thing is a bioengineered Nomu. It was made to be able to go toe-to-toe with All Might. So good luck." All the students who had made their way to the gate suddenly froze out of fear. Izuku looked on at the Nomu in concern, trying to figure out what to do against it. Suddenly an idea came to his mind. Time has been represented by many forms over the years, the most common representation being as a river. But Izuku thought in a different way. He believed time to be like an ocean in which we all swim. When one moves, they disturb the time and space around themselves. Using this thought, he wondered whether he could manipulate time so that the time for just one object would be accelerated. He closed his eyes and started to concentrate. Soon he felt it. It was as though he was part of the world around him, as though he'd become one with nature. Just as you couldn't focus on a single drop of rain, you couldn't focus on him. It was as though he was there, yet not there at the same time. As though he existed everywhere, yet nowhere. He opened his eyes, and unknown to him his eyes had turned silver. He willed the flow of time around the Nomu to increase. He kept increasing it till it reached 100 times the normal rate. Then he stopped increasing it. The students who were watching the whole thing looked on in shock as they saw the Nomu suddenly start to wither away. Within moments, the Nomu was gone. Shigaraki and Kurojiri were shocked by this and quickly made their getaway. Izuku would have stopped them, but the moment he tried to stop it, he realized he was feeling extremely exhausted. It was as though all the energy from his body had been sapped away. The moment the two left, he fell down unconscious. Every quirk has a drawback. This is no exception. Izuku's quirk puts a very large toll on the user's energy supply and stamina. It also has another drawback. Knowledge. Yes, knowledge. Not academic knowledge, rather knowledge of the past, the present, and the future. Most of the times, he wasn't able to see the future, only predict it to some extent, but he bore the burden of millennia of memories from the past. That was the curse that came with his power. When the two villains left, Aizawa contacted you, and had heroes arrive on the scene. The heroes reached within 10 minutes. At the end, about 132 villains were arrested, some of whom were on the wanted list of the police. The school declared a week break. Izuku, on the other hand, was taken to the infirmary. It took him 3 hours to wake up. When he woke up, something seemed different about him. It was as though in those 3 hours, he had matured by 300 years. Well, they weren't wrong, for in those 3 hours, he had indeed gained 300 years' worth of memories. This was also a reason why it took him so long to wake up. His brain was assimilating the information. As a result, he remained unconscious. Had he woke up, his mind would probably be crushed under the weight of the information. Once Izuku woke up, he got out of the bed he was in, got dressed, and made his way home. If only he knew the end had begun. Shigaraki and Kurojiri went over to their base, both of them still unable to get over their shocks. Shigaraki asked, "How is that possible? That thing was supposed to be able to go toe-to-toe with All Might. Someone cheated." Kurojiri said, "Tamura, Shigaraki, you need to calm down. Did you notice that green-haired kid? His eyes suddenly turned silver from green, and then the Nomu got turned to dust. I believe that kid's quirk was responsible for this. Shigaraki growled lightly, dimming them all. Suddenly a dark, menacing voice spoke. Tamura, calm down. You'll have your chance. This was just the first of many. Hide for now. Prepare for the next attack. Shigaraki calmed down slightly. Sir. On the other hand, in UA, a group of heroes had organized a meeting to try to figure out what happened and how it happened. The R-rated pro hero Midnight asked. Aizawa, Shota, you said that the man covered in hands said that the Nomu was meant to be able to go toe-to-toe with All Might. So how did you defeat it? Aizawa lulled at Midnight with his usual bored and tired look and said, I didn't beat it. One of my students did. This news shocked all the teachers. The fact that a student beat something that was supposed to be able to go toe-to-toe with All Might was incredible. Midnight, still in shock, asked Aizawa, which kid are you talking about? Suddenly our friendly neighborhood, Rat God, appeared from Aizawa's scarf. Why, there's only one which is capable of this feat, Izuku, Midoriya. Age 16 Quirk stopwatch. It allows the user to control and manipulate time however they see fit. Its drawbacks are unknown. Aizawa let out a sigh. The fact that you managed to learn everything about someone is very unnerving and concerning. Nizu A.K., a rat god, started laughing maniacally. Suddenly, a skinny blonde man wearing a tan tuxedo spoke up. Aizawa, what's your evaluation of the boy? Aizawa looked at the man and sighed. He has a good heart, a calm mind, and is very rational. He always attempts to be as efficient as possible without compromising safety and quality. Okay, here I'm going to make it that the UA faculty are aware of All Might's secret. Suddenly, Aizawa's eyes shone as he looked over at the skinny man. All Might, are you thinking of Dash? All Might said. Indeed, I feel my powers growing weaker day by day. We need someone young to step up in my place, to be my successor. From what I've seen of the kid, he is the best choice I will find. Now, whether he will accept is a different issue. Aizawa pondered in silence for a while, and then let out a sigh. Very well. Ask him, see what he says. All Might nodded and went out of the room. All Might sought out Izuku and called him over. After taking him to a place free of people, he began telling him a story. A few years back, during a battle, I sustained a bad injury. He lifted his shirt up, showing him his wound. Due to this, the amount of time I could be a hero is decreasing day by day. My quirk is called One for All. It has been passed down from generation to generation. I gained this injury while fighting the arch-nemesis of OFA that is All for One. He has the ability to steal and give quirks. He then looked at Izuku with a serious face and said, Tell me, young man, will you be willing to take this burden? The burden of being my successor. Izuku took a few seconds to assimilate all that he heard. After a full 5 minutes, he looked up at All Might with a face full of determination. I'll do it. I'll be your successor. OFA can help me with the weaknesses of my quirk. With it, I'll be able to become an even better hero. All Might smiled at this. He looked at Izuku closely and said, Well, it seems you have trained hard. As a result, you are already capable of inheriting OFA. He plucked out a hair from his head and said, Eat this. Izuku was taken aback for a bit, but with great reluctance he ate it. All Might looked at him and said, You should go to sleep. It will take about a day to take effect. With this, All Might left. Izuku went to his room, still processing everything, and went to bed. If only he knew the challenges that would befall him because of this. Once Izuku woke up, he noticed that something felt different about his quirk. For some reason, his quirk felt more potent, more powerful. It was as though he could manipulate the very fabric of space-time. You see, OFA give a huge speed and strength boost to people whose quirks aren't that powerful or who don't have a quirk. However, in his case, he had already op quirk. What OFA did was amp up his quirk to stupid levels. Deciding that he wanted to try out his abilities and see the difference, he went to Dagoba Beach. Once he reached the place, he noticed that it was very filthy. People dumped their trash all over there. The place was once a appealing spot, but now it's just a dump. With a frown on his face, he went to work. First up, he tried to see for how long he could stop time. He took a deep breath and said, Stop. and suddenly time came to a halt. He started counting how long it remained in effect. He saw that it lasted for 10 minutes. This was huge compared to the previous limit of 30 seconds. Suddenly, he had an idea. He had realized that he held the power to control time completely. He could both accelerate and slow down time. He started to wonder if he could slow time down for a single object. With this thought, he set out to train. After a grueling hour of training, he finally managed it. It took him 30 more minutes to finally get some control over it. Now, he had always been able to skip or rewind time, just never on living things, only inanimate objects. The other limitation this ability had was by how much he could rewind. Before, he could rewind time by a few minutes max. But now he could rewind time on a single object, living or non-living, by days. If he went large scale, then he could rewind time for a day. The larger the area he covered, the less amount of time he could rewind. Suddenly, he realized something. The consequences of rewinding time without thinking. You see, every action has consequences. He realized every time he rewinded time on a large scale, he would cause damage to the fabric of space-time, and if he did on a large scale continuously, then he could potentially end all of reality by destabilizing space-time. He started feeling for the threads and realized that the fabric would take about a month to heal. So he set a limit for himself. He would not rewind time more than once in a month, unless it was absolutely necessary. However, on a small scale, he could rewind time as much as he wanted. For example, he could literally rewind the time on a single object by centuries. Suddenly, he got an idea. Those who had seen the beach that day saw nothing out of the ordinary, but the next day, the people were shocked to see that the entire beach was clean and clear, as though there was never anything there. On the other hand, he went over to UA to meet with All Might. He called him over and brought him to a secret place. He said, "Listen, I can reverse the time on your body so that you can regain your prime condition, but I cannot do it over and over again just once." Okay. All Might looked at Izuku in shock. He was completely speechless. Izuku put his hand on All Might's wound and used his quirk. He reverted time on his body by 10 years, taking him back to his prime. Just as he was going to give him the good news, he got a head-splitting headache and fell down to one knee. His teeth clenched together in a desperate attempt to endure the pain. He also felt that the fabric had indeed been damaged. He wouldn't be able to use that ability again for a month. All Might helped him up. "Are you okay, young Midoriya?" "Yes, All Might. He'll be fine. Just need a little rest. See you later." With this, Izuku left UA and started to go back home. As Izuku made his way home, he felt something growing in him like a volcano waiting to erupt. Deciding to check it out, he went to the beach once again. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and tried to figure out the source of the power. He found it to be a small orb of energy pulsing continuously. He slowly opened his eyes and started to walk towards his house. Once there, he entered his room and plopped down on his bed. Slowly, he went into a deep sleep. All of a sudden, he found himself surrounded by people who he didn't know. There were 7 of them. Each of them were sitting on thrones. "Who are you people?" he asked. The people were looking at him, and suddenly one of them walked up to him. He was a bald man who looked to be in his late 40s. He said, "My name is Daigoro Banjo. My quirk is Black WHB. Black WHB grants the user the ability to produce energy tendrils from any part of their body and command them at will. It is powered by emotions, primarily anger, meaning the greater the anger, the stronger the quirk becomes. However, if not fully in control of their emotions, the user runs the risk of losing control of Black Whip. My quirk will be the first you unlock." Izuku replied, "That's all well and good, but who are you, and what do you mean by unlocking your quirk?" Suddenly, an appealing woman in her late 30s appeared. "My name is Nana Shimura. I was All Might MSTR, and I passed OFA down to him. All of us were users of OFA at some point. By now, all of us are dead, but a fragment of our soul still remains in the form of our quirks. As Toshi was quirkless, you don't see him here." Izuku replied, "I see. But who is Toshi?" Nana said, "All Might's actual name is Toshinori." "Oh, okay, got it." Suddenly, he noticed that the dream world seemed to be becoming unstable. "It seems you're waking up. We'll see you next tomorrow." Suddenly everything went white, and he woke up. Izuku sat in his bed for a little bit, then got up and did some basic stretches. He wanted to try out the strength boost he gets from OFA. He got up and went to the beach again. After making sure that no one was around, he got to his training. First, he did a normal punch to understand his base level. Then he slowly started to tap into the power from OFA. He kept doing it till he felt it spread all over his body. Once he felt it had spread all over his body evenly, he punched out, and suddenly he saw a blast of air shoot forward at tremendous speed and split the ocean to some extent. Realizing that might be a bit too much, he started to train his control. When trying that, he noticed that the punch he shot out had damaged his arms slightly. Nothing too serious, but it was enough to cause serious damage if he punched out a few more times. So he reverted time on his hand fixing it. He spent the entire day doing that. Finally, the day came when they went back to UA. All the students appeared really excited. The moment Izawa entered the room, everyone went quiet. The first thing he did was make an announcement. Listen up. You'll be getting forms asking your parents for permission, as UA is opening the dorms for the students for safety reasons. All the students got excited and went off about their day. Once classes were done, everyone made their way home to convince their parents. Izuku, on the other hand, went to All Might. He wanted to ask him for advice on how to control the Quirk better. After getting the advice he wanted, he went back as well, with quite a few ideas for moves and attacks, as well as a trump card. In a void devoid of life, a zone in space, transcending time, stood a kid, no older than 16. He had green hair with freckles on his cheek. Strangely enough, he feels very familiar, like he is known to us, and yet within that familiarity lies his mystery. The kid walked up to us. He began to say, "You will never know my name, but that is fine. You will never know the struggles I endured or the pain I suffered, but that is fine. You will never know me as a human being, but that is fine. For in the hour that was to be my last, I embrace my fate in being one of the many who are forgotten. However, my deeds and actions taken upon this day will remain forever in the story of another. Nameless, I will be present as one of the few who had a hand in shaping the world new." Suddenly, a dark silhouette of a man appeared. He held a scythe in his hand. He looked at the boy. "Come, it is over now," he said. The boy looked at the man sadly. "Was it enough?" "They will die, but not today," replied the man, who seemed to be death himself. "Then it was enough." The kid let out a sigh of relief and smiled brightly as he walked into the cold and yet comforting embrace of death. All started to go white and soddenly as the light faded. Suddenly Izuku got up in his bed. His breath was ragged as cold sweat ran over his skin. It took him a few minutes to settle down. Once he was a bit calm, he started to think about the weird dream he had. Soon he realized that his dream was too realistic. It was not just a dream. Then again, his quirk was the ability to rule over time. Could it be? It is possible that what he saw was a different timeline. However, if that is true, then there's a chance he will lose his ability to distinguish between reality and his dreams. He will be lost in timelines, not his own. However, he shook at the thought and got ready for school. Starting today, the school will implement the dorm system. He dragged his tired body to school as he thought about his dream and prepared for a long day of school. When the students all entered, they were greeted by an emotionless Izawa. "Listen up, the battle isn't over yet," he said. The students got scared and started to panic, saying stuff like, "Oh God, more villains." Izawa activated his quirk to calm them all down, not villains. Rather the UA Sports Festival. Ida, being the stuck-up idiot he is, asked him, "But sir, is it safe? After all the villains attacked USJ, couldn't they also attack during the sports festival?" Izuku looked at him as though he was stupid. "Listen, Ida, the villains aren't that stupid. Do you realize how many pro heroes will be there during the event? Still think the villains will attack?" Ida, realizing that he was being stupid, sat down. "Listen up, kids. You'll be given a total of a week to train and develop your special moves. Once you do that, you'll be taking another step towards becoming a pro. And listen up. This event is a huge thing. During the event, pro heroes will be watching you guys, and you will stand a chance at getting one of their attention and interning with them. So train hard." With that, all the students went home with different ideas for special moves. However, Izuku's mind was running at a speed different from others. He went over to one of the foe cities to train after taking permission from Aizawa. He started to think what could he do as his special move. Then he remembered that he could revert time on all inanimate objects in a large area. I'll name it turn null. However, he knew that would not be enough. He had multiple abilities, but he lacked the ability to defend himself properly. With this thought, he started thinking what he could do to create an impenetrable defense. Suddenly, an idea came to him. What if he folded space around himself to create a barrier and wrap it in a time bubble so that not only can nothing reach him, but while moving through the space-time will accelerate on it, resulting in it being disintegrated completely. He started to attempt bringing this idea of his to life. After almost an entire hour, he finally managed it. It wasn't very stable, and he would need time to perfect the thing. So with that, he called it a day and went to bed to rest. Izuku woke up from yet another dreamless sleep. Ever since at one time, he didn't have any dreams similar to that, or to be precise, he had no dreams any longer. Paying that no mind, he got up from bed, freshened up, and went to the foe city D. He wanted to improve his barrier. He spent hours on end trying to improve his barrier, but still it remained stuck at a level. He realized if the opponent was too strong, they could break the barrier with an attack. Yes, it would nullify the damage a considerable amount, but he would still be hurt. He wanted to create an impenetrable barrier. So he stopped fighting and went to his dorm. Yes, his dorm. UA had applied the dorm system for the student's safety. After changing his clothes, he went out. He was out of ideas for how to develop his barrier. So he went to the largest storehouse of information, the library. He spent hours reading up on different heroes who had barrier-type quirks. He even read books on how there was once a hero who had impenetrable barriers which couldn't be destroyed. They were so hard that it is said anyone attacking the barrier took damage instead of the barrier. He took a break from reading after a few hours passed. He noticed that it was almost time for him to return back. Just as he got up, a book caught his eye. It was an old book called Concept of Infinity. He felt intrigued by the book and took it with him. When he returned, he went into his dorm and locked the doors. He read the book. The more he read, the more he was shocked. Finally, at about chapter 5 of the book, he found what he was looking for. The concept of the infinite is truly bizarre. It is an unimaginable quantity, and yet it is contained between two very easily imaginable and definite quantities. An infinity in a finite space. He realized that while difficult, it was knit impossible to pull off. All he needed to do was compress space so much that he could fit an infinitely large space into a finite one. However, that would require him to push the very limits of his quirk. I don't believe I will be able to perform something if this magnitude. Unless, before he would have never even thought of something as insane as this. However, after getting that overhaul from OFA, it was needless to say that his possibilities had well and truly become limitless. The next morning, he went to Foe City D once again. He began concentrating on the space around him, and after half an hour, he managed to create a barrier 10 times stronger than the barriers he created before. Encouraged by this, he activated OFA. One for all 70%. Finite Infinity. Finite Infinity was the name he had created for this barrier. After spending a good 15 minutes, he succeeded partially. He created a compressed folded space where even without slowing time down, the further something went into the barrier, the slower he got. Then he incorporated his time aspect into it. For almost the entire week, he had been busy improving this ability. However, that was not all he did. You see, he needed a real trump card. One which he could use without worrying if he would end the world by causing a collapse of the fabric of space-time. After some time, he came up with a move. Broken World, Half Dimension. Broken World, Half Dimension. This move is just as it sounds. It is a very powerful ability. If used in the wrong way, it can be very lethal. He can literally have the dimensions of the world and trap a person in the interdimensional space, freezing him completely. However, he can also create a dimensional rift in such a way that it could literally split a person into two. It was a highly versatile move, which had its dangers. The entire week passed. The time had arrived. It was now time for the UA Sports Festival. The morning of the day of the festival, everyone was quite hyped. Izuku was talking to Bakugo and making plans. They had decided to form a team along with Jiro and Uraraka. It was a balanced team. Finally, Present Mike called class. Now here's the class which had a real encounter with villains. The best of the lot. Class A. Class A walked onto the field amidst cheers and hoorays. One by one, the other classes were also callowed in, but none received the same reaction as Class A. The students gathered together and began discussing various things, from who had the highest chance of winning to who will be the host or hostess for the festival. While all this was happening, the R-rated hero Midnight made her way onto the stage. The moment she appeared, a ton of cheers began in the stadium for reasons quite obvious. As the cheers began, both Izuku and Aizawa had the same deadpan look on their faces. Really, Midnight began to roll a wheel with different events. Finally, the wheel stopped on obstacle course. With that, two huge walls opened up, revealing the obstacle course. As that happened, all the students got ready. The bell rang, and a gigantic glacier appeared at the starting line. In almost the same instant, it appeared the glacier broke due to a large explosion. However, in all the chaos that ensued at the start line, they all failed to notice that a certain green-haired kid was missing. While they were busy hampering each other, Izuku was already far ahead. He had used his time stop ability to travel a good portion of the track. While the other participants were just reaching the first obstacle, he was crossing the second one. By the time the others reached the chasm of death, he was reaching the minefield. It was at this point that Mike noticed Izuku. Who is that boy? He is already at the minefield. The final obstacle. The crowd looked on in astonishment as Izuku went through the minefield leisurely. However, despite that, he was not coming in contact with even a single mine. He just strolled over to the finish line. Realizing he had arrived much too early, he decided to rest a little. Almost 10 minutes later, the others arrived with photo finishes. Once that was done, the ranks were set up. Izuku was first, with Bakugo coming in second and Todoroki third. Next up was Cavalry Battle. The first round was done. Now the time came for the second event. However, this was the UA Sports Festival. Things weren't always like what they seemed. Something they all realized quite soon. Midnight this time began announcing the points the students received. The top 52 were left at this point. She began with the last place. Then finally came the time for the first place. The person who came in first is worth 1 million points. The moment the announcement was made, Izuku felt a large number of eyes boring into his skull. He just let out a sigh and started to gather his team. They already had a plan set up. The teams of 4 arranged one by one. Once all 13 teams were ready, the cavalry battle began. Their idea was simple. Bakugo was the cavalry, Izuku was the rider, Jiro was their scout, and Uraraka's job was to keep the points ribbon secure. The battles began. And as Izuku had anticipated, almost all the teams aimed straight for them. However, Izuku was not scared. No, instead he smiled lightly. Finite infinity, he said, and created a barrier around their entire team. He waited till about 4 teams had come close to him. Suddenly he opened his eyes and said, "Collapse." All of a sudden, all hell broke loose. It was as though Armageddon had began. The moment he said, "Collapse," the barrier he had created collapsed. And with that, all the space he had folded onto itself and compressed suddenly expanded and shot outwards. It didn't do any real damage, but it flung the 4 teams away. Only of the 4 managed to recover and break their fall. The other 3 teams were eliminated. Seeing this, almost all the teams were discouraged and went after other people. Only Todoroki decided to continue his pursuit. He shot a glacier at Izuku. Izuku just looked at the approaching glacier and said, "Excel." The moment he said that, they found that all 4 of them had been shifted well out the glacier's path. This was supportability. Excel sped up time on all things he came into contact with, which allowed the target faster than what they would have moved. They watched as the glacier crashed into the wall. Izuku looked at the time and smirked. 1 minute left. Todoroki became desperate and flung 3 mini glaciers at him. Finite infinity. None shall pass. The glaciers came close to him, but then they seemed to stop moving as though they could no longer move. This was finite infinity. None shall pass, a special version of finite infinity. It was practically finite infinity on steroids, along with a bit of the time aspect mixed into it. The alarm rang, signaling the end of the cavalry battle. The points were calculated, and the top 4 teams were decided. The 16 people would fight against one another in 1v1 battles. This way the winner would be decided. But for now, in order to let the participants to rest up, a 15-minute break was given. Once that break was over, the schedule for the matches were decided. The time had come for the final event to begin. Recap: the 16 people would fight against one another in 1v1 battles. This way the winner would be decided. But for now, in order to let the participants to rest up, a 15-minute break was given. Once that break was over, the schedule for the matches were decided. The time had come for the final event to begin. Present during the break, most participants tried their best to rest up and relax. However, those which were a bit smarter tried to gather info about their opposition. 5 minutes went by in a flash. At this point, something interesting happened. Todoroki called Izuku away for a chat. Izuku and Todoroki went out of sight for the people. Todoroki took Izuku to a secluded place. He asked Izuku, "Why are you holding back this much? I know fully well that you could have eliminated almost all of the teams, so why not do it?" Izuku replied, "If I did, it wouldn't be fun now, would it?" Todoroki stayed quiet for some time and then said, "Have you heard of Quirk marriages?" Izuku nodded at him and looked at him questioningly. "You probably know that in the son of the number 2 hero Endeavor. That is a pretty well-known fact." "Yes, but do you know of Quirk marriages?" "I am aware of their presence. Endeavor has always been obsessed with becoming number 1. However, he never managed to surpass All Might. So he had a Quirk marriage with my mother. He thought since he couldn't surpass All Might, he will make sure his son does. I will beat you, Midoriya. And I will do it without using my left side, without using his power." Izuku stayed silent for a few seconds. "You're either a fool or plain, simple ignorant. What? Everyone out there is giving it their all, and you're here half-assing it. If you truly believe you can beat me like that, then you're not even a fool. You're plain delusional." Izuku turned around and started walking away. "Also, it's your power, not his." He disappeared as he said this, leaving a shocked Todoroki behind. The first match was Izuku v/S some kid named Minoma. Once both of them got on the stage, the judges announced the beginning of the round. Minoma's quirk was Copycat, which allowed him to copy the quirks of other people and use them. But he could only copy a certain number of quirks at a time. The moment the round began, Izuku used one of his special moves, Excel. He vanished, then reappeared in front of Minoma faster than he could blink, and before he realized it, he was flying back, and he slammed into the wall at breakneck speeds. The round was finished before it had even started properly. The rest of the matches went pretty much the same. The only one which was somewhat exciting was the battle between Kirishima and Tetsu. Finally, the semifinals had arrived. The 2 matches were Izuku v/S Todoroki and Bakugo v/S Uraraka. The final rounds had arrived. First up was Bakugo versus Uraraka. The fight began. Uraraka started running about randomly on the arena. All the time, Bakugo continuously tried to attack her, but she proved to be quite agile. As time went on, the floor cracked and broke more and more. Suddenly, one of his attacks landed on her, and she was blown away. A loud gasp ran throughout the stadium. A few people started saying bad things about him, some going as far as to call him a villain. Izuku stayed silent for a good while as he kept listening to what the people kept saying. Just as Aizawa was about to interrupt the audience, Izuku spoke up. In a low voice, he said, "Shut up." The moment he said those words, the entire stadium went silent. He got up from his seat. "If you people think that he doesn't deserve to be a hero because of this fight, then you all should leave right now, and for the heroes. Quit your job. He isn't doing this to hurt her. He is giving it his all because he acknowledges her strength. He acknowledges the fact that she is indeed quite dangerous. So shut your mouths before I shut it for you." Once he finished his speech, there was silence all over the stadium. However, during this PRD, for not even a second did the two stop fighting. The fight continued for a little while till both were out of breath. Suddenly, Uraraka smiled. No one noticed, but Bakugo blushed lightly, seeing her smile. Uraraka said, "You really are strong, but that is also your weakness. Here is my trump card." She brought her hands together, and suddenly a loud noise occurred. Bakugo's head snapped upward, and his eyes widened as he noticed a huge amount of debris over his head. He raised his hands and released a huge explosion, which destroyed almost all the debris. Uraraka fell to her knees, unable to continue, having given her all, betting on that move. Not being one to give up, she tried to get up to continue, but Bakugo said, "You did well. Now rest. The fight is over." Uraraka looked up at Bakugo with a weak smile, but she couldn't keep it up and she fainted. Midnight announced the end of the match. Bakugo slowly made his way to Uraraka. He lifted her up in his arms and took her off the stage to the medbay. The entire audience stood up, applauding their performance. Midnight announced a break, and the pro hero Cementos got to work fixing the stage. After about 10 minutes, the stage was fixed. The time had arrived for the most anticipated match so far. Todoroki versus Izuku. They made their way on the stage. Todoroki looked determined and angry, while Izuku looked calm and relaxed. The match started. The two contestants stared at each other for a few moments. Then suddenly Todoroki launched a glacier at him. He saw the glacier approaching Izuku, but suddenly he disappeared from in front of the glacier, but he didn't see him reappear. Suddenly, he heard Izuku speak from behind him. "Is that all? Pathetic." Ji turned around and tried to attack him again, only to hit nothing but air. "Why bother? You might as well give up and drop out of the school while you're at it. This school and this platform has no place for people who have but everything. You disappoint me." Izuku raised his fist, and in the blink of an eye punched him 3 times. Todoroki was flung back, but he managed to stop himself. "I'll never use his power." Izuku sighed. "What a fool you are. You have the power to be one of the most powerful heroes in history, and yet you refuse to use your power because of daddy issues. Pathetic. Look at yourself, you're already starting to feel hypothermia. What if civilians get trapped in ice, and the only way to save them is to melt the ice? Will you let them die because you refuse to use a power that is your BRTH right? Truly, the ignorance of humanity never ceases to amaze. How long will it take to get it through your head? It's your power, not his." Todoroki's eyes widened, and he smiled as flames started roaring all around him. Izuku let out a smile and nodded approvingly. Suddenly, he disappeared and reappeared behind Todoroki. "Rest." He hit the back of Todoroki's neck and knocked him out. Midnight announced the victor as Izuku. Now time came for the final. It was Bakugo versus Izuku. Once the stage was repaired, the two friends got on the stage and looked at each other. The start of the round was announced, and Izuku immediately went for a hook at Bakugo's jaw. Bakugo tilted his head and got out of the way of the punch. And like this, a fierce battle raged on for about 10 minutes. Finally, both the contestants stood at two opposite edges of the stage. They had a mutual understanding. They were both going to use their finishers. Bakugo used his most powerful move, Howitzer Impact. And in response, Izuku used his secret trump card, a mixture of martial art, OFA, and his quirk. He used Tsukijin no Yari, Moonlit Javelin. Izuku tilted his body, slammed his foot down, and rotated on his foot, and his hand shot at Bakugo like a real javelin. The two attacks collided, and a huge explosion occurred. The stage was destroyed with smoke and dust all around. After a few moments, the smoke cleared, revealing Izuku standing on the edge of the stage and Bakugo planted in a wall. The winner of this year's sports festival is Izuku Midoriya. The battle was finished, and both Izuku and Bakugo went over to the med bay. After a good bit, they were both called along with Todoroki. They were the top 3. All Might himself appeared for the awards ceremony. Once that was done, the sports festival was officially finished. Izuku returned tired and exhausted, which was to be expected. He plopped down on his bed, and in minutes he was asleep. Recently, he had been having dreamless sleep. However, this time something seemed different. He noticed that he seemed to be suspended in a void in space. He was unable to move or speak. That was when he noticed a gigantic shadow was standing in front of him. He could see only the shadow's eyes. They were crimson red and glowing and had a cold sharpness to them. The shadow started to shrink till it was about as tall as a normal adult human. Then the shadow started to morph and emerged a handsome man who looked like he was in his early 20s. He had white hair and a slightly pale skin tone. He smiled at Izuku. "So you're the one who inherited my will." Izuku looked at him confused. "What will?" "Oh, they never told you." "Wait, can you read my thoughts?" "Indeed I can. I have no name, at least no more. You can refer to me as Fallon, though. Just who are you? Why are you in my dreams? And what do you mean by inheriting your will?" "I believe I should explain then. Once upon a time, I used to be an extremely powerful being. I could destroy the world with a mere thought. However, my power became my downfall. Those I had trusted the most betrayed me. My body was destroyed, but my soul was immortal, eternal. I left my will behind, a will filled with vengeance, anger, and pain. I left behind my powers and knowledge. I had been waiting for someone deserving of my powers. Finally, I found one you. What? Time manipulation is just the beginning. Now you may be wondering, why didn't I show up earlier? That was because I was watching you, evaluating your performance. I found it to be satisfactory. So from now on, I'll help you become stronger. Also, the time has come for you to unlock your second power. It is known as Turn Null. When I was at my peak, I could erase entire worlds by myself using this ability. Teach me how to control it. I don't want to kill anyone. All in due time. For now, you must learn to MSTR what you have. Well, seems our time is up. I'll see you tomorrow. Till then." Everything went white as the dream collapsed. The dream world collapsed. Izuku woke up with a start, his mind still jumbled up, trying to process what had just happened. He sat up on his bed and noticed something felt different. He realized his quirk had undergone an inexplicable change. He realized that he felt as though he was in complete control of the world, as though nothing in this world could ever stop him. He was correct. Nothing in this world could stop him. However, when you have the will of a god resting restlessly inside of you, waiting to be free, the least of your concerns are people who cannot even destroy cities in one blow. Izuku was not stupid. He knew this. He also knew that this meant that he needed to become much more powerful. Suddenly a voice spoke in his head, "That will need time. For now, focus on learning how to use Turn Null. You have barely touched the surface. You have gotten decent at controlling the time aspect of the will, but you have just scratched the surface. You will become more powerful. You will become stronger than I could ever be. After all, I've already started working of divinising OFA. But for now, learn to control the space aspect of the will. Till you become strong as gods, I will hide the signature of your soul from them. I have been speaking to the holders of OFA as well. I'm going to train you every night in your dream space. You will need to become much stronger. Once you have some amount of control over the space aspect, I will be able to transcend your soul. As it stands, your soul is that of a normal human. Once I transcend it, your soul will evolve into that of a lesser deity. You will gain a tremendous boost to your strength and will unlock new abilities. But that will come in time. For now, go to class. I'll see you at night." With this, his voice faded away. Izuku sat there blankly. He remained that way for 5 more minutes. Once he got past the shock, he got up, freshened up, and got dressed. He went to class. After a while, Aizawa came to class. He said, "You lot did a decent job at the festival, but there's still one thing left to do. During the festival, several heroes watched your performance and have sent you internship requests. However, before that, you need hero names. You need them to be good, or they can stick with you. I'm not good at this, so someone else will be taking over for this." The moment he said this, the door opened up and Midnight walked in. "I'm going to help you guys choose the hero names." A cheer rose from the class. One by one, the students chose their hero names. Finally, Izuku's turn came. He already knew what his name would be. He had thought a lot about it and decided it. He walked up to the front of the class with a board in hand. On the board was written, "The Timeless Hero, Fallen." He figured the Fallen wouldn't sound very good, so he went with just Fallen. The name got approved by Midnight, and he went back to his seat. Everyone except Bakugo had their hero names by the end of the PRD. Bakugo kept choosing names with murder in it, so he had to try again later. Izuku flipped through all the application forms till he found one that caught his eye, Gran Torino. Izuku's eyes widened. He remembered something All Might had told him. Gran Torino was his mentor, the one who helped him control OFA. With this in mind, Izuku chose Gran Torino. The rest of the day was relatively uneventful. He went back to his dorm. He plopped down on his bed, and pretty soon he was in a deep sleep. There he found Fallen waiting for him. "Welcome, young one." He looked at him and said, "What should I call you?" "Calling you Fallen. Feels weird, my see. Then call me Lucius." "Well, I hope you're ready, 'cause you will very soon learn the meaning of hell." Izuku spent the entire time in his dream world training with Lucius. It didn't take long for him to figure out what Lucius meant by hell. He spent the whole time training his spatial awareness. Lucius said, "If you wish to learn to control space, you must become one with the space. Over time, you will learn to control more space. At first, it will be a small region, the size of a room. That will be your domain. Once you establish your domain, you will be unstoppable within your domain. A god of sorts. In said domain, the laws of space and time, the very fabric and essence of reality will bend to your will. However, you have yet to reach a level where you can create a domain. First, you must learn to become one with space. Sit." Izuku, like a good pupil, sat down. "Close your eyes. Take deep breaths. Slowly you will feel your conscience expand. Soon it will reach out of your body and merge with the space around you. First do that. Then we shall proceed." Izuku spent 2 entire hours trying to do it. When he was just about to give up, he felt something. Something inside of him was resonating. It was growing and expanding. Like a violent tempest, it surged out of his body and covered the entirety of his room. However, then it ran out, unable to progress any further. Izuku felt a limiter inside of him slowly but surely disappear. He opened his eyes and felt as though the world around him was in tune with him. Lucius looked at him. "Good. You have completed the first step. Now, for the next step. You have become one with the space surrounding you. But now you must make it bend to your will. However, that is easier said than done. Space only bends to one MSTR, the supreme deity, a being even I dare not battle. So you must fight against space. You must bend it to your will." As he had said, it was not easy. He spent 5 hours to get the space to bend slightly. It was resisting with everything he had, and he would need all the strength he could conjure as well. The final hour was also spent on that task, but to no effect. He felt his consciousness fading, and he woke up. He saw it was 8:30 in the morning. He got up from bed and prepared to board his train. At 9:00, he was in the station with the rest of his class. He and a few other classmates were heading to Hosu for their work studies. They boarded the train. Sometime later, they reached their destination, and everyone parted ways. Izuku made his way over to the address he had received. Once he reached the house, he walked up the stairs till he found the room that was supposedly where Gran Torino lived. He found the door was open and immediately went on alert. He found Gran Torino lying on the ground. He saw all around his body there was BLD. Just as he was about to get closer, he noticed something was off. Gran Torino's BLD seemed far too viscous, and its shade was not right. He realized it wasn't BLD, but rather ketchup. He walked up to his body and said, "You can get up now." Gran Torino got up with a shocked face as Izuku chuckled. "Nice try, but you'll have to do better." Izuku could already tell this was going to be an interesting time. Once Gran Torino got over the initial shock of the nonchalance of Izuku, he got serious. From inspected Izuku with keen eyes, this kid. He possesses a tremendous amount of power. Even though he seems relaxed, his muscles are brimming with power that is prepared to explode at any moment. If my calculations are correct, he should be able to handle 40% of OFA without any serious damage to himself. This is good. He has a lot of potential. Izuku was indeed capable of using 40% of OFA without damaging himself. However, that was the original OFA. The current OFA was something beyond anyone's imagination. The previous OFA's 40% was 8.4% of the current one at stage 1. After Lucius had tweaked it, there were 5 stages of OFA. Stage 1. It was 10 times more powerful than the original version. It was much more easier to control as well. Stage 2. It was 10 times stronger than the stage 1. It also had another feature, Black WHB. Along with that, this stage allowed him to compress the internal kinetic energy built up to release in one destructive burst. However, there was a limit to the compression. If he overcompressed the energy, it could also hurt him. And overusing the compression may cause his bones to break or, in a severe case, his arm to rip off. Stage 3. This was 10 times stronger than Stage 2. It unlocked 2 quirks, Float and Smokescreen. This stage had a special feature as well. In this stage, he could enter a temporary Berserk stage, which boosted his physical capabilities by 100% for 30 seconds. The moment the Berserk PRD came to an end, Izuku would be placed in a temporary paralyzed condition, unable to move for about a minute. It would also place him in a weakened state. Stage 4. This stage was 10 times stronger than Stage 3. It unlocked the quirk FA Gene. This stage also had a special ability. In this stage, one could enter a temporary War Demon state. All physical capabilities would be boosted by 500% for 1 minute. The moment this duration was over, it would trigger a special state called Final Stand. For just a single attack, the user's physical stats would skyrocket by 1,000%. This would allow the user to gain the upper hand in a close battle. It can be stacked with the other Berserk state as well. Once the PRD is over, the user loses all power and may fall unconscious. Stage 5. This stage was 20 times stronger than Stage 4. It unlocked the quirk Gear Shift. This stage had a really powerful ability with an equally powerful backlash. This ability was called Overdrive. It would enhance all of his stats by 500% and would heighten his senses to levels which shouldn't be possible. It had a more powerful version. This was known as Overclock. It boosted his stats by 1,000%. However, this state puts severe strain on the body, which may cause the body to collapse if used for a prolonged PRD. Lucius had completely transformed the quirk, so Izuku had to adjust to it as well. He knew there would be no easy feat. Gran Torino said to him, "Listen up, kiddo. I want you to do something. Activate OFA at the lowest possible percentage. Then slowly spread it all over your body. Once that is done, ramp up the percentage." Izuku nodded and did as instructed. However, soon, he found it was much harder to do than he had anticipated. Though it may sound easy, it was anything but. He could tell this was going to be quite annoying. Strength. In medieval times, it was the decisive in determining life and death. The strong lived, the weak died. It has always been this way. However, there were some who were different than the others. They were very lonely, not in the sense that they had no one to talk to, no. They were lonely because they were too strong. No one could beat them. In the middle of a field died read by the BLD of men, fighting a war for reasons they did not know, stood a man. In front of him, there were 11 soldiers. All of them were extremely strong, as was obvious from the aura they released. The man had green hair. His eyes were dull. He was soaked in BLD, the BLD of his enemies. He held a sword in his hand. He was quite tired after having fought for a long time. However, when faced against those 11, he stood straight and tall, like a prideful son of heaven. He dared to defy the heavens and laugh in the face of fate. He rushed towards the 11. They were thinking that he would be easy to kill, but they were grossly mistaken. The person in front of them did not earn the moniker, the bringer of death, for no reason. He rushed at them and began fighting once more. He had sworn that he would live one life, a life steeped in war. He would die on the battlefield, not in a bed, comfortable and weak. He fought Gem with all he had. One of the 11 held a large war hammer. He swung it at him. The man jumped over the hammer and in one swift motion took the man's head off his shoulders. 1 down, 10 left. This man was like a mythical demon. He would not stop or rest till everything in his path was dead. He kept fighting. One after another, he killed them all. However, he was tired. He took several blows, each blow capable of killing a normal person. Yet to him it, as if nothing happened. Finally, after an entire hour of fighting, he had won. In this deadly game of life and death, he had emerged victorious. However, his time was drawing to a close. He could tell he didn't have long. Everything was going dark. His entire body was in pain. Slowly, he trudged his body over the battlefield. He was the only one alive. Once again, he stood at the end of the battle amidst a sea of bodies. He was a prideful son of heaven. He refused to lie down and embrace death. He did not bow in front of a king or even an emperor, and he would not bow now or kneel even in the face of death. He stabbed his sword into the ground and put his weight on it. His breathing was out of rhythm. His vision was almost black. He was tired. He was cold. The cold was lonely, but he was alone. With the last bit of power remaining in his body, he stood straight and upright. Even in death, he did not bow. Even in death, he still stood strong, as though challenging the heavens. His breathing stopped. The last trace of life faded from his body. Such was the cruelty of this world. No one would ever know his name, nor the pain he suffered. But they will know that it was this man who stood in the face of all adversity and took it head on. He dared to battle against all enemies, even if he knew that they were stronger than him. His name was Izuku Midoriya, the Eternal Blade. Izuku had already become used to these dreams. He had asked Lucius, and he said that these are him just in different universes. He now tried to learn from the people in his dreams. He tried to feel how they felt. He got ready, and went to Gran Torino for training. Today was the second day. Yesterday, they hadn't done much. They just worked on increasing his control over OFA. Gran Torino figured that it wasn't that Izuku couldn't control it well enough. Rather, it was that his body could not handle the power. He spent the next week training. Once he was finished, he could control up to 10% of OFA, which meant that he could go toe-to-toe with All Might. After that, Gran Torino and Izuku went on patrols regularly. One day during these patrols, all hell broke loose in Hosu. Shigaraki, along with several Nomu, attacked the city. In a matter of minutes, the city went up in flames. Pro-heroes from all over the place, and all those in the near vicinity were called onto the scene to help bring the situation under control. However, most were unaware of the hidden danger, lurking silently in the shadows like a predator waiting for its prey. In Hosu, an infamous serial killer popped up. He went by Stain. He earned the moniker the Hero Killer. He had killed several heroes and critically injured many more. However, no one managed to catch him. Izuku and Gran Torino went to the scene where the Nomus were present. However, just as Izuku was about to join the battle, he received a notification. Ida, who was also interning in Hosu, was asking FPR backup. Izuku activated OFA and blitzed toward his location without a second thought, hoping he wouldn't be too late. Within moments, he arrived onto the scene. What he saw shocked him. Ida was lying on the ground bleeding. Stain was standing on him with his blade, prepared to stab into him. Next to them, the pro-hero manual was sitting. It was obvious that he was in no condition to fight. Izuku activated his will and took Stain down so quickly that nobody even realized what had happened until a few seconds after it had happened. After making sure that they received medical attention, he went back out to the battlefield. He punched a Nomu through 2 buildings, taking it out. He was like an unstoppable force, taking out all the Nomus like they were nothing. Just as he was about to take out the final Nomu, a blast of air hit him in the back and flung him away, making him crash through 3 buildings before stopping. He coughed up a bit of BLD. He got up slowly and finally got a good look at what had attacked him. It looked like a human, but it had no facial features. It had large black wings and pale white skin. In its hands were spears which were glowing, probably made out of pure energy. Izuku became apprehensive. He realized this was not something that is supposed to exist in this world. This was something that belonged to a higher power. Izuku activated his full power. Just from that one blow he had received, he had realized that this thing was very powerful. If he wanted to stand any chance at victory, he would need to go all out from the very start. What happened next, however, surprised him greatly. Izuku had spent a considerable amount of time training with Gran Torino. But what Gran Torino didn't know is that after training with him, Izuku trained with Lucius. Not all training sessions were regarding battle, though. Lucius also taught him about various deities and entities. When Izuku saw that creature, he felt that it seemed oddly familiar. Then he remembered that one day Lucius had told him about a kind of interdimensional entity called the Gordians. They were immensely powerful. However, some are weaker than others. These beings, though called Gordians, were not at all nice. They served a dark god. Their purpose was to corrupt worlds and HRNSS souls. The Gordian that stood in front of Izuku was relatively weak. It was a lower deity in terms of rank. In terms of power, it was a tier 6C at best. Izuku knew that though it was indeed weak, it was still a handful for him. He was going to have a really tough time with this one. Izuku went all out from the very beginning. However, unbeknownst to him, there were marks spreading all across his body. These marks were not at all ordinary. They seemed mysterious, divine even. Izuku blasted forward at the thing. He made use of all that he had learned. He condensed space into his fist and pooched out. The Gordian, however, was no pushover. It struck out towards Izuku as well. Their attacks collided, and they were both flung away. Izuku's hand felt numb from the collision. He clenched his fist a few times to regain feeling in his arms. He realized that things would not be very easy for him. He would have to use his trump cards. Izuku started condensing the space around his fist, which caused it to start tearing. His very presence created rifts in space. The Gordian also began gathering a huge amount of power. It created a blade made of pure energy and dashed at him. Izuku closed his eyes and waited. When the thing came close, he suddenly opened his eyes and released a devastating punch. It's over. He unleashed the more powerful attacks in his arsenal. He called it Lonely Heaven, Secular Existence. It was part of a series of moves he was developing. He called it Divine Fist, Envoy of Heaven. This was the second fist. So far, there were 5 attacks in this move set. His fist collided with the blade and shattered it. The fist seemed unstoppable and continued onwards. It crashed into the thing's body and sent it flying. The Gordian flew back several meters and stopped. Izuku went over to it and saw a gigantic hole in its torso. It was dead. He noticed that the entire region had been devastated. The city was in ruins. It looked like a city from hell. Izuku made his way over to the heroes. The battle was finished. It wasn't easy, but for what it's worth, it could have been a lot worse. The casualties were kept at a minimum. A few days later, the internship came to an end. All the students made their way back to UA. Izuku was no exception. He took his leave from Gran Torino and got on the train. He was returning to UA. He had already decided what he was going to do. He was going to enter seclusion and train hard. He was still too weak, in a pile of rubble. The Gordian's corpse was laying under a pile of rubble. There was a gaping hole in its torso. Suddenly, its body started twitching. The hole started to repair itself. Within moments, the hole was gone. It was as though it wasn't there in the first place. It blasted out of the rubble. Even though it didn't have a face, you could tell it was pissed. It stared in the direction where Izuku had gone and blasted off. The Gordian was yet to be killed, and it would not stop until it died. Izuku was returning home. He was completely oblivious to the coming danger. He was currently speaking to Lucius. He felt like the current OFA was resisting him, as though it was not a part of him. Lucius looked at Izuku calmly. He said, "The problem is not with OFA. It's with you. Before you didn't experience this problem because you embraced it. You accepted it as a part of you. You weren't afraid of it. However, after I revamped it, it became much more powerful. This made you afraid. It wasn't something that happened consciously. It was an instinctive reaction on the subconscious level. Until you accept it fully, until you stop fearing yourself, you will hold yourself back. You will not be able to access your full potential." Suddenly, the train he was on shook violently. The train went barreling straight down from the bridge it was on straight to the ground. The result was catastrophic. Quite a few people were hurt. Izuku got up. He had managed to protect himself at the very last second. He looked around. The entire place was in flames. Then he noticed it. Something was walking towards him through the flames. He was shocked. In front of him stood the Gordian. He couldn't believe his own eyes. He was certain that it was dead. Suddenly, it disappeared and reappeared in front of him. It struck him square in the chest, making him cough up BLD. He was flung away. He got up slowly. He was hurt. He could feel that his internal organs had been hurt slightly. He was confused. A moment before, when it attacked him, he felt that the blow was much more powerful than when they were fighting earlier. He got up and activated OFA. He shot forward at it and pooched it. However, to his dismay, his punch didn't even scratch him. Instead, the thing struck him once again, and he flew back once more. He had taken a lot of damage. He could barely stand up. He started to lose hope. Am I going to die here? Is this the end? No, I will not let it end like this. I still have so much to do. I cannot. I will not give up. I need to protect them. Suddenly, Jiro's face flashed before his eyes. Get up, get up, get up, damn it. Izuku slowly started getting back up. However, unknowingly, OFA started to pulsate. In this moment of crisis, when he stood on death's door, he had subconsciously accepted OFA. His fear of death helped him overcome his fear of losing control of OFA. OFA full cowling. 70%, he suddenly disappeared and reappeared in front of the Gordian. This time a Gordian was caught off guard. He knew that he should be able to defeat it easily now, but he didn't want to take any chances. He immediately unleashed what was his strongest attack. At that point, Forgotten Heaven, Denounced Shrine. The punch held catastrophic amounts of power. The punch was so powerful that when it landed on the Gordian, its body blew apart, incapable of handling the power. The ground around them mattered. Izuku slowly got up. There was BLD coming out his mouth. He fell down. He was severely injured. Just as he was about to go unconscious, Jiro's smite flashed before his eyes as he heard the sirens of emergency services approaching. Izuku spent the next 3 days in a coma. He showed no signs of waking up. Another few days later, he showed some signs of waking up. After almost a month, he finally woke up. However, something about him had changed. He seemed to be completely in tune with his surroundings. It was as if the space parted to let him pass, instead of him passing through space. It took him another week to get discharged from hospital. After he got discharged, he went straight to UA. There, after getting permission from the teachers, he immediately entered seclusion. He had learned that the exams were approaching. There would be 2 parts, a theoretical and a practical part. After entering seclusion, he first meditated for an entire day. While he was in the coma, Lucius had told him about the cosmic tier system, a universal system of measurement of power. There were several different tiers: lesser, human, true, human, greater, human, supreme, human, lesser deity, true deity, greater deity, supreme deity, lesser, angel / devil, true angel / devil, greater angel / devil, supreme angel / devil, lesser divinity, true divinity, greater divinity, supreme divinity. As it stood, Izuku was a supreme human. If he unleashed his full power, he was capable of challenging a lesser deity. But that was not all. During the time he had completed his divine fist style, Envoy of Heaven. It had 13 fists and 1 forbidden move. Breath of Heaven, Desolate Sky, Lonely Heaven, Secular Existence, Deathly Heaven, Eternal Night, Forgotten Heaven, Denounced Shrine, Lost Heaven, Pathless Sky, Empty Heaven, Catastrophic Tempest, Judgment of Heaven, God's Descent, Penance of Heaven, Eternal Path, False Heaven, Malevolent Shrine, Forbidden Heaven, Instant Eviction, Sorrowful Heaven, Tears of Judgment, Descent of Heaven, End of Incarnation, Origin of Heaven, Yggdrasil, Rebirth of Heaven, Eternal. Light of Yggdrasil, he had also started working on another fist style. He called it Divine Fist Style, Envoy of Hell. It had 13 fists so far: Breath of Hell, Desolate Hell, Forgotten Hell, Lonely Purgatory, Dark Hell, Underworld, First Hell, Purgatory, Sinner's Hell, Limbo, Pure Hell, Penitent Flame, Lonely Hell, Severed Soul, True Hell, 9 Hells, Descent, Burning Hell, Black Flame, Purgatory, Freezing Hell, Frost Flame, Purgatory, Descent of Hell, Armageddon, Forbidden Hell, Nihility of Creation, Origin of Hell. End of Days, however, as it stood, he was incapable of using any of the fists beyond the 8th fist. Even the 8th fist hurt him. The 9th fist and the ones beyond might cripple him, or worse, kill him. So as it stood, he needed to improve his body's constitution. So he got to work. With the help of Lucius, he modified his body, made it stronger, sturdier. 2 months went by in a flash. The time arrived for the exams. When the time came for the exams, he came out of his seclusion. When he came out, he seemed different. His eyes held a calmness that was not normal. It was as though he had transcended the emotions and became completely indifferent to everything. All the students gathered. It was time for the final exams. The students went to take the theoretical part of the exams. A few hours later, they came out. Some people were in high spirits, while others seemed crestfallen. However, Izuku remained just as serene as before. It was as though nothing could create a ripple in his heart. Then came the physical part. They all thought that it was going to be faux villains again, just as during the entrance exams. However, they were met with an unwanted surprise. They learned that they were going to have to fight against the teachers. The fights were allotted. It was in the same kind of pattern. 2 students versus a teacher. The rules were determined and battles began. The battles occurred one by one. Sometimes the students won, and sometimes they lost. After some time, the final battle arrived. Izuku Midoriya versus All Might. Now for the others, the teachers had restricted themselves so as to not hurt the students. However, this time around, All Might didn't restrict himself. He was going to go all out. The battle commenced. Izuku calmly entered the battlefield. He seemed completely calm and very confident. Very soon, All Might appeared. He launched himself at Izuku. He punched out at him. Izuku just calmly raised his hand in reply. All Might's fist collided with his palm and came to a complete halt. All the viewers were astonished. Izuku had stopped a punch from All Might, and he made it look easy. Then Izuku pulled back his other fist and smashed All Might away. He went flying back through multiple buildings. Izuku let out a sigh. This was what he had expected. He knew he was far too strong for normal human beings. The exams came to an end, and everyone went back to their dorms. Izuku entered his room and plopped down on his bed. He asked Lucius, "Hey, what is the strongest being you know of?" Lucius remained quiet for some time. Then he replied, "The definition of strength allows for many people who are incredibly powerful. However, very few ever learn what true strength is. Normal humans exist in 3D space. They are incapable of comprehending any higher dimensions. However, once you reach the level of supreme deity, something changes. You evolve, and you're capable of comprehending 4 dimensions. At that point, time becomes a physical dimension. When you reach the level supreme angel, you can comprehend 5D space. Gravity becomes a physical dimension. However, they possess only a rudimentary control of gravity." Lucius stopped talking as though he were thinking. Then he started again. "However, not all supreme angels can become lesser divinities. There are quite a lot of supreme angels. However, very few have the potential to become a lesser divinity. The reason is quite simple. Once you become a divinity, regardless of which kind, you transcend dimensionality. You exist in all dimensions, and yet in no dimensions at the same time. The higher you are in the tier system, the more dimensions you transcend. Those at the very pinnacle are beings who have transcended near infinite of dimensions. Only other divinities are capable of perceiving their true form. Any lower being would die, as their brain wouldn't be able to comprehend their true forms." Lucius stopped talking for a while. "You asked me that the strongest being were yes. There are beings so powerful that they surpass the ranking system. We call them boundless beings. Among them, 3 of the strongest are the anti-principal, Sam Howell, a.k.a. the Transcendent, and the Scarlet King. All 3 of them are beings capable of unimaginable destruction. However, Scarlet and Sam are much more powerful than anti-principal. The reason for that is that both of them are beings who have transcended the infinite fractal hierarchy, consequently surpassing all dimensions. Scarlet King is even more powerful than Sam. Though Sam can alter reality, Scarlet King can end all of creation. He can accidentally blink away entire universes. That is how powerful they are." Izuku stayed silent for a while, processing the information. This was when he also realized just how weak he was compared to the beings who had reached the pinnacle of power. The exam results came in. While a vast majority had passed, some had failed. Aizawa entered the classroom and told them they were going to go to summer camp. Those who had failed will also be going, but they were going to have to work harder than the rest. As a result, those who had failed seemed terrified, knowing fully well what awaits them. They all got on the bus, which would take them to the camp. Everyone was traveling and chatting with themselves. Well, with the exception of a few people. For example, our protagonist himself. He was listening to music and thinking about time. He wanted to become stronger, but he was experiencing a bottleneck. He couldn't get through to the next layer. He knew he was on the brink. He was so close and yet so far. He asked Lucius the reason, and he told him that though he had gained enough strength, his comprehension was lacking. So he decided to focus on developing his time strength. He was thinking of several concepts relating time. What is time? Can it truly be controlled? He kept wondering until finally he realized the problem he was having. Time was just like a flowing river. It cannot be stopped. If you tried it then, it would either break through the barrier forcefully or spill over. However, what you could do was limit the flow. Reduce it slowly but surely. He started experimenting. After a few minutes, he realized something else. Time by itself could not be controlled, which was why whenever he forcefully altered space-time considerably, it would cause damage to it. However, what about speed? Speed was an attribute of time. While time cannot be controlled, you could control its attributes, such as speed. He could increase or decrease speed. He could decrease it so far that it would go in reverse. With this in mind, he changed his manner of approaching the problem. Within minutes, the barrier which had prevented him from advancing to the next tier was shattered. He felt power flow throughout his body. Unbeknownst to him, his eyes began glowing. In about 3 minutes, the glow went away. Finally, after just a few more minutes, they arrived at the bottom of a mountain. This mountain was where the summer camp would be. The bus went up the mountain for a bit more before it came to a stop. 3 women in questionable clothing appeared. Some of the students recognized them as the Wild Wild Pussycats, a group of 4 heroes. They are relatively famous. Within a few moments, the 3 women, the one whose gaze was quite unnerving, nearly pounced on Izuku. Izuku, being the kid he is, deftly sidestepped, letting her go right past. One of the other girls, who introduced herself as Mandalay, said, "Sorry about her. She is approaching the age of marriage. This creates a few problems." He. No one noticed, but a certain purple-haired girl definitely did not like this at all. After all, even though she may not admit it, she had indeed taken a fancy to the green-haired boy. Mandalay said, "Well, your summer camp will begin at the top of the mountain where we will be waiting. Your bus won't help you." Some of the kids realized what was about to happen. They sprinted towards the bus, but Mandalay used her quirk and caused a landslide. All the students went flying off. Well, almost all the students. Izuku and Jiro had been standing together. The moment Mandalay unleashed the landslide, Izuku took Jiro's hand and used space movement, one of his newer skills, to teleport in the sky. He hadn't realized that Jiro, whose hand he'd been holding, had gone red from embarrassment. Once the landslide finished, they landed on the ground. Jiro fitted around, slightly blushing hard. Then they teleported together all the way to the top of the mountain. The Pussycats and Aizawa were surprised to see them both arrive this early. They had their rooms arranged and went to their rooms. After a few minutes, they went together and sat down together. Neither of them said anything. They were both blushing. Izuku hadn't realized what he had done at that moment. After entering his room, he finally realized, and he almost screamed from embarrassment, while Jiro nearly screamed from excitement. After a few more minutes, they both turned at the same time and said, I dash. They blushed once again. Then Izuku finally spoke up. "Sorry about back then, I didn't mean to dash." Jiro interrupted him. "It's fine. I just hadn't expected it was all. Not that I minded." Oh. What Jiro didn't know was that though she'd been whispering, Izuku, with his enhanced hearing, had heard her loud and clear. Jiro stayed quiet for a little while. She took a few deep breaths and steeled herself. Then she turned around and said, "Izuku, I like you." After saying thus, she turned red and heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed as though a huge weight had been lifted off her shoulders. She shyly turned to look at Izuku. She saw that he was staring at her and seemed stunned. I like you too." Hearing this, Jiro smiled ear to ear. She leaned in and gave Izuku a kiss on the cheek. Then she quickly scurried away. For almost 5 minutes, he sat there stunned. Then he also smiled slightly as he got up and went to his room. Upon entering his room, he realized that he could feel his surroundings much more clearly. Somehow, after accepting her feelings, and also his own, his domain had expanded. He focused and expanded his domain. He realized his domain now covered the entire mountain. Nothing on that mountain could occur without his knowledge. Just a few hours later, the students arrived at the peak. All of them were tired and hungry. They had a grand feast and fell asleep, completely unaware of what was brewing in the shadows. Izuku was the only one who felt something was off. However, even he could not imagine what kind of crisis was to come. In the initial stages, when quirks had just made an appearance, some people were capable of causing untold destruction using specific attacks. These are known as origin arts. However, these arts were lost in time. These attacks could reshape the landscape of an entire city. It could even affect a country. Izuku and the rest worked quite hard, training their butts off. So Aizawa and the Pussycats decided to SWCH things up. They organized a competition between classes 1A and 1B, who had also arrived. The competition was simple. Each class would take turns to try and scare members of the opponent class. At first, there were no problems. Everyone had fun, well, almost everyone. Some people just wet their pants from fear. After about 30 or so minutes, Izuku noticed a rift in space. His domain was disrupted. He concentrated and realized that there were multiple people arriving, and they were spread all over the place. Suddenly, a large plume of smoke appeared along with raging flames. Izuku looked at Aizawa, who gave him a discreet nod of approval. Izuku blitzed into the forest. Two villains attempted to ambush him, but Izuku rotated on his toes and delivered a punishing roundhouse kick to one of the villains' faces who crashed into the other, both unconscious. He continued moving deeper. He took down a total of 7 villains by the time he reached the core of the forest. There he noticed a man covered in scars, his hand releasing blue flames. The man noticed him and shot his flames towards him. Izuku squinted his eyes, and suddenly everything slowed down to a crawl. He calmly walked up to the man and delivered a crushing punch to his face. He then used space movement and teleported right to the place where the most students were. He noticed an oversized raccoon attacking Todoroki and Bakugo. He appeared above it and punched it so hard that it got indented into the ground. He then continued in this manner. Suddenly, he heard Mandalay's voice in his head. "Attention, all students. Villains have attacked us. We, the teachers, give you permission to use your quirks. Also, the target of the villains is Katsuki Bakugo. Protect him as well as you can." Izuku dashed towards where Bakugo had been, but he only found Todoroki lying on the ground, panting hard and gritting his teeth. He looked at Izuku and said, "They got him. I tried to stop them, but..." Izuku put a hand on his shoulder and squeezed lightly. After about an hour or so, all the students had gathered. The police arrived and arrested around 30 or so villains, some of which were actually quite dangerous. For example, Izuku, while moving about, had beaten a man unconscious in a single punch. That man had later been identified as a wanted criminal named Muscular, who was responsible for the death of several heroes. With this, the summer camp, which was supposed to be a relaxing training session, came to an end in a manner no one could have expected. As all the students had let down their guards, a terrifying aura and killing intent washed over them. Izuku looked up and saw a man flying high up in the sky. He recognized that man, John Abrahams, an American criminal, really powerful and completely insane with no regard for human life. He seemed to be preparing a large-scale attack. By the time the pros reacted, it was already too late. He had already unleashed the attack. Izuku seemed horrified at the sight of the attack. He recognized it as the origin art, Thunderbolt Wyvern. He gritted his teeth and prepared an attack of his own. Origin Breaker, Thunderstorm Hell. He unleashed an attack that was equal in comparison to the attack John had released. It was even slightly stronger. The two attacks canceled each other out almost completely. Izuku's Thunderstorm Hell overpowered Thunderbolt Wyvern and struck John Abrahams, knocking him out unconscious and completely incapacitating him. However, unleashing such a powerful attack was not without cause. Izuku, in the process of unleashing it, had also injured himself and spent his power completely. He fell down unconscious from overexertion. However, what he didn't know was that he had gained a nickname due to this event. People began calling him the Origin Breaker. Choice, a fundamental part of humanity. Due to it, we believe we can choose what is good for us and what is not. Due to it, we find ourselves unable to decide what to do when confronted with options. However, do we really have a choice, or is it just an illusion? Asked a masked man. This is a question I asked myself 3 years earlier, and I realized there is no real answer to this. The masked man wore a typical tuxedo and gloves. He was sat on a chair in front of a few people. At first glance, they seem like normal people. But upon looking closely, you realize they're not normal people. They are all heroes. The man continued, "You see, I'm not like 70% of the population. I was not of the fortunate few born with powers. Do you know, even if you're born with powers, you may not necessarily be accepted by others. Even if one is fortunate to be born with a quirk, people discriminate amongst them on the basis of whose power is stronger, whose power is hero-like, and whose power is villainous. What a bunch of B*LLSH*T. In this world, all that matters is strength. Strength decides who lives, who dies, who prospers, and who disappears. It's as though we've regressed over time, as though we gradually lost an idea of who we were." The man paused for a good few seconds. The man looked up. "People will want to know my name, but I cannot inform them of it now, can I? So how about you call me Vengeance? And today, I will enact the final verdict, my vendetta, against this society which made me who I am. I want nothing that would profit me. I am neither a hero, a villain, or a vigilante. All I want is to watch the world burn, just as it had done to me." The man stops speaking as his voice begins to crack. He takes a deep breath. "So let's play a little game. You have until—" He looks at his watch. 12 tomorrow. That gives you 24 hours. At 12 noon tomorrow, one of these heroes, a pillar of this admittedly crooked society, will lose his or her life. I hope you will find them, or else, well, in the end, they are still human. If exposed to 10 tons of TNT, even their bodies would disappear. So I bid you adieu and the best of luck. Izuku Midoriya, who had been in a coma for the last 15 days. He had finally regained his conscience. Well done. In the final moments during your battle, you broke past your subconscious limits and achieved what we call limit break. It allows you to unleash 150% of you power in one blow, but it is usable only as a last resort, said Lucius to Izuku. Well, our time here is coming to an end. I believe I granted you a powerful finisher, a trump card, if you will, at least till you become capable of using your divine fists. An old friend of mine showed this to me several years ago. Lucius took in a deep breath as energy gathered into a formless sword. The moment the sword began to take shape, the temperature rose violently, as all creation seemed to turn to a seething hell. I'm not the invincible swordsman, Jubii. I'm not the one praised as an MSTR of espionage, Hanzo. I'm not the renowned caster, HeWhoSawTheFall. Why, out of all people, a swordsmith was summoned. For being unable to foresee that, this is your defeat. Once seeking for the ultimate blade, a blade of steel cutting no flesh, nor bones, and neither life. What I seek for is the clearance of resentment, the cutting of bonds, fate, and destiny. That is, to free oneself from karma. Upon one's arrival are countless tools, carved over 1,000 blades, forming a pile of swords. This is the place where all paths cross. This is the place where all desires flow. This is the place where all deaths await. My whole life was for this single swing. The heart of the blade is right here. Take this. This is my Tsumokuri Muramasa. The world turned to ashes and reformed into a blade. A blade that severed no flesh, drew no BLD. It was a sword that severed the very fabric of space-time, even fate itself. He lightly swung the blade and severed the entire reality marble that had manifested. It was an appealing idea, but it would never truly work. He was limited by the constraints of his mortality. But I am not, just as you are not. Lucius stopped speaking. The dream world began collapsing, signifying that he was waking up. Izuku nodded at Lucius and disappeared from the dream world. When Izuku woke up, he was met with Jiro and his mother. After a heart-warming few moments, Aizawa entered the room alongside All Might. They informed him of vengeance and the threat he had given. Izuku fell into deep thought. According to the police, this guy has made no ransom demands or other threats. It is as though he just wants to kill the heroes. That was when Izuku realized something. This guy truly does not want anything other than to watch the world burn. He wished for society to lose trust in heroes and crumble on itself, covering itself in the chaos it itself had created. That guy is not the enemy. We are our own worst enemy, our only enemy. After Izuku finished listening, he entered a meditative state to speak with Lucius. Even if he was very powerful, by human standards, he still lacked the vast experience that Lucius held. He saw that Lucius was sitting in a field looking at the moon as winds blew slowly. He looked back and saw Izuku standing behind him. "Come, young one. Sit. Nature's beauty has never ceased to amaze me." He looked at Izuku, and, as if sensing his inner turmoil, he asked, "What troubles you so?" Izuku looked at Lucius and told him of all that had transpired. Lucius patiently listened to all of it, and then said, "People such as these, they have nothing left to lose. That makes them dangerous, for they know they have no weakness, as they see it. They are willing to do whatever it takes for them to fulfill their dreams." Lucius' face grew solemn. However, such people are usually broken, far too much so. They do not care for anything any longer. Unfortunately, such people cannot be redeemed. They can only be ended. As he said that last part, his tone grew cold and desolate. You need to understand this, youngling. While it is a good ideal to wish to save everyone, however, some people are far too gone to save. If you try to save them, it'll only cause you pain and nothing else. Lucius got up and beckoned Izuku to follow him. "Let me tell you a story." Lucius and Izuku walked together as Lucius began his tale. Several centuries ago, there was a man. The common people hailed him as a hero. His enemies called him the Crimson Reaper, Death's Herald, and other such nicknames. He, however, has paid a price for such fame. He spent countless sleepless nights surrounded by the corpses of his friends and enemies alike. All lost their lives fighting in a war they had no reason to fight. That man was the only survivor of a bloody war. When he returned, his allies hailed him as a hero. However, he did not reply. After the war, he was awarded many things and granted the title of BLD Lion. However, he did not care. He knew what he had done. He slaughtered thousands in order to survive. He held no thoughts of courage and bravery, only fear of death. Izuku sat down in front of Lucius. Afterwards, he fought in 2 more wars and then disappeared. He promised that in the nation's time of need, he would return. Several years passed. People gradually forgot the name BLD Lion. Then disaster struck. An army with incomparable might appeared. They slaughtered all in their path. Within a week, the nation was pushed into a corner. They hoped that a savior would appear. As if answering their calls, the BLD Lion returned. However, he was old, just a shadow of his former selves. The enemy knights laughed as they saw the old man coming at them alone. They called him an ancient relic of an era long past, a forgotten shadow. However, what they did not know is that this man knew he was close to death, so he had come to partake in one last battle. He lifted his blade and slaughtered the entire enemy army by himself. In the end, the battle lasted several days. At the end, those of the enemy that survived ran away out of fear. The BLD Lion stood tall, his body covered in BLD, both his own and his enemies'. Wounds littered his body. He still stood tall at the end, even as he drew his last breath. That man was a warrior. However, he was still only a man. You, youngling, are someone with the potential to become a god. So show me you are worthy. Achieve strength that would make me proud to be your predecessor." As he finished saying this, the mindscape went white as Izuku was forced out of his meditative state. However, when he opened his eyes, he was horrified at what he saw. The entire city, consumed by flames as a singular being, stood in front of him. He noticed his friends and family lying all around him, none dead, but all injured. He looked closely, and he realized what exactly was the cause of this destruction. A high-level guardian, the Agitator. Power level, 5A. This won't be easy, I'm still stuck at 6A. Izuku steeled himself for the battle ahead. Izuku knew the battle was going to be tough. He wasn't even sure that he could win. He didn't know what he should do. How could he, a boy who merely dreamed of trespassing in the domain of the gods, fight a being who could in essence be called a demigod? At least he could attempt to run away with his friends and family, or at least by enough time for them to run. However, the agitator was not going to wait for him to think about his life's choices as it blitzed at him and slammed its foot into his chest and sent him flying away. He rolled along the ground and struggled to breath, at least 2 ribs broken. SHD. He coughed up a little bit of BLD. He grit his teeth and got up, lost heaven, pathless sky. He attacked the agitator, his fist connecting with its hand and stopping dead in its tracks. His eyes widened. Sure, dash, the agitator punched him and sent him flying back once more, this time into a building. He struggled to keep conscious. Suddenly he heard Lucius' voice. "Is that all you're capable of? I'm disappointed. I expected more from you. Where is your drive? Did you forget what you were after? You wished to protect your friends and family, did you not? How will you do that if you're dead?" Izuku pushed up, but how? It's so strong. I can't even make it move an inch. Lucius calmly said, "That is because you are afraid. It is natural to feel fear, but if you let fear control you, guide you, then you can never become powerful. What do you fear? The day you realize that you will become far more powerful than it could ever be. You're more than powerful enough to fight it, but you hold yourself back. So, I'll ask once again, what scares you? What are you afraid of?" Izuku's eyes widened. He realized that he really was afraid. So he began to think what scared him. He thought for a while and then realized he was afraid of death. He was afraid to lose those close to him. "Death, I'm afraid of death." Lucius smiled. "Then become death." Izuku's mind went blank. "What? You heard me. Become death. If death scares, then rule over death. You're walking on the path of the strong. Remember this, the path you're on. It will forever be filled with death. Wherever you go, you will leave behind a trail of death. Such is the path you have chosen. You must accept that." Izuku fell silent. He began remembering all the fights he'd been in. He curled his fist and slammed it into the ground. He felt an unspeakable rage. "Then I shall do just that. I tried my best to protect my friends and save them all, but I cannot succeed in that. Then I'll destroy all my enemies to protect my friends, my family. In order to protect life, I shall become death." Unknown to him, the skies started to darken. Lightning fell all around him as a black aura covered him. He started to feel his strength skyrocketing. The agitator had started walking away, believing the fight was over when it felt a sharp spike in power. Penance of heaven, eternal path. The agitator just saw a fist appear before its face, and the moment the fist made contact, he flew back. He rolled for a good 50 or so meters before coming to a stop. Then he saw the boy it had been fighting standing, but something seemed different. It could see a confident and determined look in his eyes. It got up carefully when suddenly it felt it. Fear. It felt as though it was staring death in the face. Izuku calmly walked towards it. Descent of heaven. End of incarnation. He arrived before the agitator and slammed it into the ground, so hard that the entire city trembled and most of the area around him got obliterated. "This is the end for you." Izuku coldly stared at the agitator. The agitator had realized it was going to die, but it started laughing as if it found the situation hilarious. "You can kill me, godling, but you cannot stop what is coming. He is coming. He will devour you in this world." Izuku stayed silent and pulled his fist back to deliver the final blow. Judgment of heaven, God's descent. Izuku stayed silent. He turned around and started walking. He got out of the crater he had made. When he reached the surface, he looked around and saw the city lying in ruins as he felt darkness take over his vision. Izuku remained unconscious for 2 days. When he came to, he learned that the entire city had been ruined and there were many casualties. However, none of them were students. Only a few pros had been Kia. He was also relieved at the fact that none of the heroes who had died were close to him in some way or form. However, this relief did not last long. He remembered what the agitator had said to him. / flashback, start / the agitator had started walking away, believing the fight was over when it felt a sharp spike in power. Penance of heaven, eternal path. The agitator just saw a fist appear before its face, and the moment the fist made contact, he flew back. He rolled for a good 50 or so meters before coming to a stop. Then he saw the boy had been fighting standing, but something seemed different. It could see a confident and determined look in his eyes. It got up carefully when suddenly it felt it. Fear. It felt as though it was staring death in the face. Izuku calmly walked towards it. Descent of heaven. End of incarnation. He arrived before the agitator and slammed it into the ground, so hard that the entire city trembled and most of the area around him got obliterated. This is the end for you. Izuku coldly stared at the agitator. The agitator had realized it was going to die, but it started laughing as if it found the situation hilarious. You can kill me, godling, but you cannot stop what is coming. He is coming. He will devour you in this world. Izuku stayed silent and pulled his fist back to deliver the final blow. Judgment of heaven, God's descent, / flashback and / Izuku stared down at his own hands. He began to think of the vow he had made. He had chosen his path, but was he prepared? Izuku clenched his fists to rid himself of his negative thoughts. He got up and walked to the room where Jiro and his mother were. He stared at them from through the glass and then got up. Lucius, be honest with me. How powerful am I compared to these beings? Izuku asked in a solemn manner. Lucius remained quiet for some time before he replied. Not enough. Not nearly enough. As it stands, they could kill you without even realizing they did. You couldn't even do enough to make them flinch. Izuku smiled sadly. In the end, I can't do it, can I? Is it really possible to defeat these beings by yourself? Lucius stayed quite before he answered. Do not underestimate the power of one person. One person was all it took to bring about the fall of an empire. One person is all it takes to build an empire. The number of people does not matter. What matters is how much that person is willing to sacrifice to achieve his or her goals. Is he or she prepared to give everything? Or is he or she someone who is afraid of losing it all and, as a result, gain nothing? Remember this. You have the power to provide all creation with life and light, or you can cover all creation in darkness. Start music, so tell me, will you give up, or will you rise? Let them feel it. Your soul, your heart, your will, your determination. Burn all your negativity and doubt. Let the fire that is your heart, soul, and will burn brighter than the brightest star. Let all you enemies cower and regret the day they became your enemies. Lucius said calmly. Izuku stared at Jiro and his mother as he grit his teeth. Lucius went wide-eyed as he felt Izuku's soul starting to burn brighter. It felt as though all hell had risen to remind the world of its sins. Izuku quickly warped away into a destroyed part of the city as he let out all his rage, sadness, despair, and negativity. A bright pillar of light, brighter than anything else in the observable universe, appeared where he stood. That pillar was the mark of the BRTH of a new god, an emperor among emperors, a being who would be worshipped alongside the primordial gods as the god of time. This event was felt by all beings who had achieved divinity as they all stood up to honor the BRTH of a new god. This was the moment the symbol of power was born. An eternal symbol, one whose existence was paralleled only by the incarnation of chaos and cruelty, Quirk and the tree of creation, Yggdrasil itself. Thank you for joining us on this journey through What If Deku Had Time Manipulation Quirk. We hope you found it as captivating as we did. A big thank you to HeWhoSawTheFall for creating such an engaging story. Don't forget to visit their profile on Wattpad for more fantastic works. The link is in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Zenin Fanfics for more intriguing explorations into fanfiction and fantasy. Your support helps us create more content like this, and we love hearing your thoughts and suggestions in the comment section. See you soon in the next video.